All right, all right, all right. What's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing? My name is Ian Robinson, and I am the Senior Master Trainer for ZBrush here at Maxon. And today we're going to do some really cool, fun stuff today because we're going to be working on the iPad and actually demonstrating some hard surface techniques. Now, what's really cool about this is that if you are using the desktop version of ZBrush. Actually, and I should have prepped this ahead of time. Let me go find it real fast. But there is actually, I did a live stream a couple years ago, which actually showcased how to do hard surface stuff with a lightsaber. And this is kind of the same thing, but with a little bit of a different twist, as obviously we're using the ZBrush for iPad edition. That's why we call it the ZBrush iPad edition. But real quick, let me see. I could share the lightsaber desktop version as well, in case you're wondering if you can follow along with the PC version. So let me see if I can find that real fast. Let me see here. See if I can find it real fast. How is everyone doing? Seeing some people in the name. What's going on, everyone? Hello, hello. Yes, yes, lightsaber stuff. Let me see if I can find it real fast. But anyway, that's what we're going to be doing today. So this is a follow-along series for sure, and in which, of course, you can go back and you can easily, you can easily go back and follow along with this even after the recording is done. Now, let me do some little cleanup here real fast. So I'm going to quickly post some links into the chat. So if you, let's go over here. Just so if you're new to everything and a little bit of what we call a little bit of intro stuff here. So obviously we're Maxon, so we provide 3D creative tools for artists around the world to basically get your projects done. So go to maxon.net for more information on that. The links I just shared also include our Getting Started in ZBrush for iPad. Now this is accessible from the app itself. So if you have the app and you don't know how to access this, I will show it to you. But this is something in which you'll be able to access and follow along. There's over 30 videos, like 35 videos, and we update this on a regular basis in order for you to follow along and keep up with what the changes are happening. And of course, if you are a student, a teacher, or you lead a classroom of any kind whatsoever, go ahead and go to our educational licenses where you can actually get a major discount on licenses. So whether you're a student, teacher, or you run a classroom, please check out that info. And of course, too, we have our very own Maxon ZBrush channel. This is where a lot of live streams happen, not just this one, but also we do a lot of shorts where we've been updating. I've personally been recording a lot of the shorts for the iPad because iPad has only been out less than a year, and there's a lot of information on the iPad, while a lot of it is directly related to the PC version. If you're on the iPad version, there's a lot of info to know. So we've been coming through with a lot of shorts, updating everybody with that. So look out for more shorts because they're quick one-off tips that showcase how to do a certain thing. And then, of course, if you are interested in downloading the lightsaber I made, there's a link in that I shared, which will take you here. You could just fill this out real quick and go ahead and get your lightsaber. Now, with all that being said, let's just come over here. Is everyone going? We got some lurking. We got everything. Let's hop it in. Nice, nice, cool. All right. So I did want to find real fast. Let me see if I could find that lightsaber stream real quick. The one with the PC version. I should have had that prepped before. I know it's here somewhere. Let me just find it real fast. But what's cool about it is, of course, that it is the PC version, so you'll be able to have that. And today is going to be quite fun because, I mean, honestly, it's just we're making lightsabers, which is really fun. That's always cool, right? Who here is a Star Wars fan? Let me see here. This is probably a live stream we did a while ago. If I can't find it in the next minute or two, then we'll just move on and we'll start with this one, and I'll try to find that information afterwards. Here we go. Found it. It's a couple years ago. Very, very cool. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this to the chat. So this is the previous one, and I'll show it to you right now. This is where I kind of go through and I make more of a Luke Skywalker style lightsaber. The one we're making today is actually just kind of my own idea from my favorite lightsabers, but you can see here, we're coming through and we're ending up making from scratch using very similar techniques. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. All right, cool. So we're going to actually come over here. Let's switch over here. Boom, boom. There we go. I'm certainly a Star Wars fan. Absolutely. On the behalf of Dutch people. Are you coming to IBC again this year? Says Mr. Peter. Yes, I will be at IBC this year, as currently planned. Yes, yes, yes. Hey, what's up, Mike? How you doing? Very cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And of course, this while we're basically going over everything, you can ask questions as I'm going through it all because I can see the chat. But just know that, yeah, don't be afraid to ask a question. But we're going to try to stay on target. Normally, my streams more focus on Q&A time, but today we're going to be very specific with what we're doing. R2-D2 lightsaber and a little bit, kind of a little bit of influence. So first and foremost, welcome to the ZBrush for iPad. If you've never seen this before, this is the new UI. And of course, this is, this looks a lot different than what you might notice. When you see me moving around, you're going to see 2, sometimes 3 blue dots. What this will indicate is just where my fingers are. If you see a white dot at any point in time, that white dot is indicating that I'm using the Apple Pencil. Just out of interest, how long roughly is the session? This will, until we're done. So sometimes about, I'd say like 2 hours-ish. I don't have the mood to work today. How can I make mood to work? No worries. I feel you, dude. Sometimes I'm with you on that one. So just sometimes we gotta just zoom into what we love. So real fast, let's go back to the beginning here. So this is kind of what we're going to be creating. We'll be creating something a little bit more fresh. Of course, getting reference is always key. So an easy way to get reference is actually to just open up your web browser here. And then, of course, you can type in, we could just say lightsabers. Boom, right? Pretty simple stuff. And then you can go, don't worry about that. Go to images. And we can always pull from things that we like at any point in time. If you want to look at both with ZBrush and ZBrush and your reference, you can come up here to ZBrush and click those 3 little dots. And you can do what's called a split view. And then you can go ahead and pick the thing that you want to split view. And you can even adjust this. So you can come in and look at your reference while you're working inside of ZBrush, which is kind of cool and easy way to do it. So you can see I have a ton of projects here and so forth. Just before we get started, note that we have announced the ZBrush Summit. It's going to be a virtual ZBrush Summit this year. We're celebrating 25 years, so November 7th through the 9th. So keep an eye out for that. As well as on Friday of this week, we have a special guest with Henry Shabenka, who's going to be demonstrating even more crazy, fun hard surface techniques using ZBrush. Okay, so now here, this is if you want to keep a reference. We're gonna wing it today. We're just gonna close that down. And of course, we're just gonna come up here to new sculpt, and we're gonna start with a mesh primitive. So let's start with a DynaMesh sphere. It's one of the most popular ways to start. So this is exactly how I like to do that. Now, perspective is usually turned on by default. This is just my own personal preference. It's up to you, but it makes life easier if you are working in hard surface to turn off perspective. This way you can make really nice, clean selections on straight edge loops, and you can make sure that all your loops are straight in the way you would like them to be. I rarely work in hard surface and perspective, but that is a personal preference to me. Also, too, I'm going to see something real fast. We might turn on a little bit of music while we do this. Oh, there's this thing called night driving. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear it, but we'll see if that kicks on. Okay. We'll see if the music happens. All right, and we're just going to go ahead and turn off the floor grid, which is here on the left-hand side. Now, symmetry, we can leave symmetry turned on if we need to. Like I said, if you're new to ZBrush for iPad, then one of the things you can do is come up here to the top right-hand side and click that little question mark, and then you can go to tutorials, and that will open up your tutorials and get you to that page that I linked you to originally. So that does exist for you. And Basic navigation, real quick, is just 2 fingers pinch in and out, zoom in. And you can also rotate if you would like. You can also do the traditional press and hold Alt and click the pen to pan around and let go to zoom in and out, very similar to the desktop version. Also, this may not be super intuitive, so I do want to cover this, which is the actual wheel modifier. And with the wheel modifier, there's a couple of little tricks with it that is, oh, music is too loud. Ooh, okay, let me turn that down. Good to know. Here, let's do that. There we go. Thank you for that feedback. There we go. We can always turn it off too. I just like having something in my ear. So with the wheel modifier, something to note is that the shift key can be combined with either the control key or shift alt key. So all you have to do is press and hold one of the buttons and drag your finger over to multi-select. And then to let go, we'll just deselect. If you press and hold alt and go to shift, or press and hold alt and go to control, that's how you multi-select. You might see that throughout this video, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and clean that up. Is the music better now? Hopefully it's not too much. Okay, cool. It looks like it might be pretty cool. All right, we'll wait to make sure the music's good and then we'll get going. I also have my coffee and I have my water and we're ready to rock. Music is good. Awesome. Okay, so first things first is obviously we turned off perspective, we turned off the floor, and we do have our global symmetry turned on. Something to note is that the main, oh my gosh, 1 second, there we go. Okay, something to note, my screen stopped sharing, 1 second. This is 1 second. Yes, this will be available after the recording, so 1 second here. Screen share, entire screen. What happened? Ooh, my screen just stopped sharing, so give me 1 second. This is a little bizarre. How bizarre. Do, 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 do. Screen share. Okay, entire screen, share that, it's fine. There we go. Okay, great, perfect. Sometimes my screensaver turns on and then disconnects everything. Okay, so we have our brushes here on the left-hand side, and the main brushes we're going to be using today, if we click the Z or we scroll all the way down to the bottom of all, so if we come here and click all, scroll all the way down to the bottom, we will be using our ZModeler brush. This is the main brush that we're going to be really utilizing today. And Kate, yes, I think I might have answered this, but yes, this will be available after the session, and it will be up on the Maxon training team, and it should be up on the ZBrush Live, or the ZBrush channel as well. Great question. And which iPad model am I using? So I am using the 1 terabyte M4 iPad. I just went all out and got that one because it was just a little bit easier, knowing that I'm going to be doing a lot of ZBrushing. But any iPad with the A12 chip and up, so basically if you've got your iPad around, I want to say 2020 and up, you should be good to utilize ZBrush. There is a completely free version of ZBrush for iPad available today, and it's free for as long as I can tell you. It's going to be free forever. So with that being said, you'll be able to download and try it, so you don't have to subscribe right away. But the I think ZModeler is included in the subscription though. And then the last question, and then we're really going to get started here. Ian, nice to see you again. Nice to see you too. Do you think Brush for iPad is usable for working pipelines and complex models? Absolutely. Yes, 100% I can answer this question. In fact, before we really get started with this, what I can tell you is that if you were to come into the main menu here and open up, go to New Sculpt, go to Pro Projects, you can see a couple Pro projects that ships with ZBrush. And one of them that I really like is called the Z-Ride. And this was made by Henry Javenka, which he'll be demonstrating more techniques this coming Friday. But if you want to just take a look at how complex this model is, and it's really clean too, like looking at pressing and holding Alt, touching this, look at the clean geometry. It's very, very really beautiful, but also it's very complex. So yes, you can absolutely use the ZBrush iPad edition for complex works and pipelines. And furthermore, too, if you have if you have the latest versions of ZBrush and ZBrush for iPad, you can utilize GoZ to send your projects back and forth from the desktop to the PC or to the iPad. Awesome. So great questions. Okay, we're going to go ahead and just get back to this. So lightsaber time. It's what we're all here for. So we're going to go ahead and go to New Sculpt. We're going to open up our DynaMesh sphere. Got our nice wireframe on, and we're going to turn off perspective and the floor. Okay, great. Now what we're going to do is, I'm a big advocate of saving. So saving is very crucial. Lightsaber stream. Boom, there we go. So we're going to do a lightsaber stream. Saving is everything. So make sure to save your work. I'm a saveaholic. I do it all the time. It's very important. And what we want to do is we're going to hide this first version, and we're going to go ahead and come to, so we're opening up our subtools, coming to the plus icon here at the top. And just like a normal desktop, you'd be able to see that we can get a cylinder 3D. If we turn on our wireframe, which is how I do a lot of hard surface work, is seeing the wireframe, then you can see that this is our base sphere that we're pretty used to on the desktop version. Any ideas if ZBrush will get a customized hotkey? I can't speak on the development publicly, but all ideas are welcome, of course. But I mean, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Short answer is I can't really tell you. What are the limitations for iPad compared to the desktop version? So a lot of the limitations would be the more powerful the PC, in fact, we'll load that question. The more powerful the PC, the more vertices you can have and the more dense your model can be. Just like anything, so iPad's kind of the same way. The more powerful the iPad, the more complex models you can have. So in this case, it's like some of the limitations are not all the features are crossed over completely. And then two, the other aspect is, ZBrush for iPad is, it has a few other different features that the desktop version has and vice versa. One of them being surface noise. You could take a picture of the iPad because you have a dedicated camera. You can't quite do that on PC. So there are going to be some differences between the two. Overall, the way to really answer this question is it's not so much what are the major differences or limitations. It's more about like the reasons why you'd want to take a model mobile, and it supports the latest version on desktop and PC on iPad. So meaning you can send models to and fro. So really, it's like this opens up a mobility thing. So really, the limitations, I guess, to answer your question in a very training, long-winded answer is just hardware. Hardware is your main limitations, and then some feature sets. That's pretty much going to be it. Not too much though. Okay. So let's do this. I'm going to pause some questions. Great questions. I'm going to pause some of these questions and let's get into a good chunk of this, and then we're going to do some more questions. So first thing we have here is, of course, we have our nice little handle. If I'm going to long press this and go to rename, and then we're going to call this just a basic handle. And so one of the tips that I like to do when it comes to hard surface anything is, of course, coming into our tool palette. So click this top little palette button here, go into tool. And this also works on desktop as well. Is you go to geometry and you scrub down until you see edge loop, and then we scroll down until we see delete loops. Delete loops deletes all the unnecessary loops that you don't need, but that are not necessarily supporting the model. Meaning here, the only edge loops that remained, if I two-finger undo, the only edge loops that were deleted were ones that didn't actually make up the shape of the model. If I three-finger redo, hitting delete loops just deletes those unnecessary edge loops. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're going to have some really cool features here that we're going to be utilizing. One of them is just combining our Gizmo and ZModeler. So if I press and hold Control and I go to mask off this top part, and if you didn't know, notice that on the wheel that I'm no longer pressing Control. If I press and hold Control and I start to drag and I let go, that allows and frees up my hand for masking. If I press and hold the space bar, I can now move that mask selection. And so I can either mask the bottom or I can mask the top. I can also press and hold Alt and inverse that mask. meaning that now only the bottom portion is masked, and I can freely move the top portion. So whatever was within the white box actually did not get masked off. So that's something to kind of make note of. And we're going to be doing that a lot. So, and the reason why is because if we zoom out, we can actually kind of extend this forward a little bit. Press and hold Control to clear and drag to clear our mask. And then we can, you know, we can also just rescale this and restretch this as needed. So whichever works for you, but this way just gives you some options. And so we want to do this function. Now, the other reason why we'd want to mask off an area is that we can also do what's called the control duplicate trick. And that control duplicate trick is when you press and hold Control on a dual-sided, basically on a watertight mesh. This doesn't work with single-sided geometry. So this works with watertight meshes or dual-sided geometry. And you can press and hold Control, and you can basically duplicate an edge loop. So you might have seen this trick once before. If you press and hold Control and use the arrow, or use one of the white areas here, one of the white arrows or the colored arrows, you can actually duplicate that model just by pressing and holding Control and dragging. So, and we'll be doing that a lot too, but you also can do that with edge loops, which is very fun. And this is a really simple but very effective trick to use when you're actually using, when you're doing any type of hard surface stuff, especially if you're just modeling from scratch. So we're just gonna do a basic block out, just like you would any character. Hard surface is very much the same thing, so we just wanna block a few things out here. So one of the things that we're going to block out, and let's just switch that over, there we go. What we're gonna do for the block out here is I just kind of wanna have a nice little stem. Again, if we look at some of lightsabers examples, you know, they all have different shapes. I'm a big fan of Luke's original saber, or from the one from Return of the Jedi. So that's one I kind of like to kind of copy and mimic when I make designs. So I'm gonna press and hold Control to duplicate. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of piece this wherever I want. And what's fun about this is you're just kind of like getting a sense of what the saber is gonna look like. So we're just gonna duplicate and have this mesh here. Now, one of the things that I really am going to preach before we go too far with anything hard surface is that we are going to want to use polygroups to our advantage. And a polygroup, if we open up our tool menu and come down to polygroups, a polygroup is basically the color that you see. Think of them as an ID selection set. And so here, because I have something that is masked, I usually come down and then I pick a group mask with a group mask, then clear mask. So what this will do is anything that is masked, if I click this button, it will give it a new polygroup, and then it will clear that mask. And you can actually create a hotkey shortcut, which I have over here, which is under the custom menus. So by pressing holding spacebar, you get custom menus available to you, and you can see I have that set up right here. And if you don't know how to do a custom menu, it's really simple. Come up to the top right-hand side where it says customization and click that button, and then go to quick menu at the top. And then you can scrub through, and you can see here that we allow up to 5 different custom menus. And all you need to do is go to where that area is. So the geometry, we're gonna scrub down until we see our masking. Oh, sorry. No, we're gonna go to polygroups. Lied. So you go to polygroups, then we're going to go to where we see the group masked clear mask. Go ahead and long press that, and then you can drag that into your custom menu. And then if you want to get rid of anything, just press and hold that and hit the delete. But let's pretend we added it right here. There it is. Press done, and then press the space bar, and then go to that custom menu that you have. And that's how you would do that. So here we're just going to quickly press and hold Control Shift. And we're going to isolate, press and hold Control, and tap, which will give us a mask, and then Control Shift. So again, press and hold the Control, drag into Shift to bring things back. And if you press and hold Control and you tap one time, it flips that mask. Now, I know I might be going a little fast, but again, this will be on replay, so you guys can come back at any point in time. You can also, with the gizmos turned on at no mask, you can just Control tap any one of the subtools that you would like, polygroups, and that will select that version of it. So here I just control tap this one, reset this to center, and then I can go ahead and move this position. I can also unlock and reset this so that makes sense, and then control drag again to make a new selection. So here we're just coming through and giving us some base shapes. Nothing too crazy. Awesome, I'm gonna check some questions now. I'm good at organic sculpting in ZBrush for game ready hard surface. Should I learn Maya Blender or just use ZBrush and ZModeler? Which is best for clean topology UVs and bake it for Unreal? And so that's a great question, admin. So really, ZBrush can really help with a lot of your needs. Yes, there are other programs that are used in the game industry. So depending on what you want to get, what you want to do, you can do a lot of it with just ZBrush, 100%. There are other options as well, but you know, any tools that you need, those are very popular tools and very much used in the game industry. So you would eventually want to learn those depending on what pipelines you're going to get into. For organic sculpting in ZBrush, I would say focus on getting good at sculpting and then going into the retopology side of things. And if you're doing things for hard surface, ZModeler is more than ready to get you what you need to where you can have nice clean topology ready for unwrapping and so forth. And we also have, you can also use Cinema 4D for unwrapping your UVs as well, which you can go from ZBrush straight into to Cinema 4D and then back. There are some UV tools inside of ZBrush, which you can use as well if you wanted to, especially if you're setting things up. But there's a few other options for you as well. And you can also do retopo in ZBrush. Great question. Okay, so here we're just going to kind of, again, we're going to go back to our reference and we're just going to kind of look at things. So I like this kind of long stem here and then some other attributes. So we're just going to kind of copy that stuff, and copy as in like, I'm just kind of taking a little bit more liberty with what I feel is necessary. Going to give me a different polygroup. Let's go ahead and kind of mask this section off and then bring this up here. There we go. Now the lightsaber I'm probably going to create is going to be a little bit different than what we showcased, but that's going to be all good and well. Now here we have everything that's super low at the moment, and that's going to be okay. So boom, let's go ahead and touch that. It's the vert. There we go. So Control Shift, let's go ahead and back this up for a second. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and maybe place this a little bit lower. Right now, you are just kind of witnessing me fiddle a bit too, which is totally fine. That's something that I think gets lost a little bit in translation when we talk about modeling anything, is just have fun with it. Like following along and doing a thing is great, but also feel free to take your own liberties with what you're doing. Now we're going to press and hold Control and drag, and we're also going to create a duplicate of this. And this time we're just going to make this a little bit bigger and scale this up, say something like this. There we go. And if we want, let's clear that mask, and then let's go ahead and select this top portion, press and hold Alt, and just bring that through the rest of the way. And if we see any type of like, oops, I selected too much of one thing or whatnot, you can just Control tap that back. I accidentally selected a different poly group. So you should have something kind of like this at this point. And again, we're just kind of exploring shapes at this moment, just so we kind of see what's happening. Now, one of the things that we're going to want to do is also feeling free to break things apart when we want to. So if we press and hold Control and drag to Shift, or press and hold Shift and drag to Control, either way works. We're going to go ahead and isolate the handle part. And we're going to go to a split hidden. So instead of just going to Tool all the time and finding your stuff, we do have a dedicated Subtool folder. So if we click our dedicated folder here, we can actually go to Split and say Split Hidden. And now we actually have a different section here. And we can do this for a lot of stuff. If we hit Auto Groups and we get different groups, we can actually break a few of these sections off and say Split Hidden. So this way, we're not just confined to one subtool. It's very important to know, when you want to break something apart, just to keep things a little bit cleaner. Any questions so far? Oh, okay. Well, we can turn the music off. Is it really still that loud? It's more for my own thing, but don't worry about it. There you go. Solved, Sean. Comic Legends. Hi, happy 25th anniversary, ZBrush. Will there be any anniversary shirts available for purchase? I am not sure about that at the moment, Comics, but there will be more information as we get through. Awesome. Okay, great. So now let's finish blocking this thing out the rest of the way. Right now, proportions is important, and proportions are a little small, so we can make those adjustments. Again, this is more kind of nitpicky stuff, and we're just going to kind of play with this a little bit. So if I Alt tap, now that I have different subtools that I've created, if I press and hold Alt and I tap on the different subtools, it's going to select that subtool. And that's a quick way to go to basically kick through what section you want to work on. And in this case, I'm just going to press and hold Alt for this middle one, and I'm just going to scale this down a little bit and kind of stretch this, because there's going to be more elements to this added later. Music wasn't loud at all. Okay, no worries. We can keep it off for now. I appreciate it. Thank you. And so here we're just going to go ahead and kind of make that small adjustment. Now, just like the human body, proportions, they all measure to themselves. So adjusting things too much in the early stage is not really going to be beneficial for you, because everything kind of measures off itself. Things start looking really nice once you actually start getting all of the elements in place. So if you're at this stage and you're asking yourself, okay, why is he fiddling around with little bits here and there, or is there another reason why he's just adjusting? Just know that it's really just more about an eyeball approach at this moment. If you have an actual blueprint, I come from aerospace, is how I first got into 3D. So if you have an actual blueprint, then it makes your life a whole lot easier, because then you're just literally following a blueprint. In this case, we're more exploring at an artistic level to find the shapes that we need. So either way, it's all about what we're just trying to achieve. So here, we're just kind of throwing these things up. Now, like I mentioned, we're kind of copying a little bit of what we see here in loops, but also there are some other things that I added in the one that I first showcased. So just kind of finding the elements that you really like is very important. In this case here, I do like a little bit of another handle, or like a hilt. I think that's what it's called. No, it's not called a hilt. Anyway, a pommel, that's what it's called. A pommel at the bottom of it. So here what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just press and hold the subtool I want to duplicate, and I'm going to duplicate this one, and I'm just going to click the actual gizmo and just drag this down. Say something about here. Let's zoom in, 2-finger pinch to zoom in. And I don't need both of these, right? So I can turn off the gizmo, press and hold Shift and Control, and just select the section. Now see, I had the select lasso here, so I'm just going to move that down to this bottom one, and then I'm going to press and hold Control Shift and drag that to switch, and then we are just going to go to Delete Hidden, and that is located under Tool, Geometry, go down to Modify Topology, and Delete Hidden. The same exact steps as if you were on PC. Now, like I mentioned with the custom menu, is I actually have that set to a custom menu, so where I can do that in the future. So say something like this, and now I'm just going to adjust and stretch this and kind of get a shape that I think would look good. Now I'm going to kind of make this floating a bit, and then I'm going to Control mask off this bottom section, press and hold Alt, because what I want to do is just kind of give this a bit of a taper. Clear that mask, and then just kind of readjust to something that I think makes sense. Okay, great. So very bare bones, right? For press and hold Alt, go into this middle stem here. I could literally just drag this whole stem and have it go all the way through, but that seems a little unnecessary. If I hit the solo button down at the bottom, we can see just how long that is. So if I come here, press and hold Control, unzoom, and then just drag that, we can make a duplicate of this. And I will just kind of rescale this and have this fit down here at the bottom. Because again, we are just doing a block out, very similar to what you would do with a character. There we go. And then clear that mask, or even better, just go ahead and go to our group mask, because again, if we have our polygroups on, you can see here now we have 2 different polygroups, and that just makes life a lot easier when needing to select. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and hit save. And so at this point, if you are following along and you're just absolutely just kind of, you know, if this is your first time basically following along or doing anything hard surface, just know that this is like very standard workflow. This is something that's really easy to just kind of get into. So just treat it like a character and everything just tends to work a whole lot better. Now we're going to need a switch, something that indicates the front of it. So notice right here where my finger is at, there's this little cam view guy. This little cam view guy tells you what direction you are actually facing when you're looking at your model. And so in this case, it's like we want to make sure that the front of our model, Saber, character, whatever, is facing in the same way as the cam view is. It just makes it a lot easier. So when we want to block out the actual switch portion of this, we can just go to Subtools, we go to plus, and we go to a 3D cube. And now we know that the guy is facing us, so we're just going to turn him so he's facing the little side. And we can just come in and we can place this in the front section. Boom, perfect, right? Now, one thing I'm going to call out before we go too much further is take a look at this beautiful geometry in this cube. This beautiful geometry in this cube is one of my least favorites because it has a pole on the top and the bottom, and it's fun if you want to make like crystals and stuff like that, right? Because you can actually come through here, jumping ahead of myself just a bit, right? But you can come through, delete a point, you come in and kind of mask that section right there, invert that, right? And then you can lift this, oops, come through. What happened here? Okay, just come through. Let's just quickly mask that section, Control tap, right? Then you can lift this up, and boom, you're starting to make pyramids and crystals and stuff like that. That's all good and well. But for something that needs clean, even topology all the way through, that's actually not going to work for me. So there's a couple ways you can actually get cleaner mesh with the cube. And the easiest way, let's hit solo, and let's open up the cogwheel, and let's pick the polycube inside of the cogwheel's settings. So if we click polycube, now if we zoom in, it's really small, unfortunately. So what we need to do is we can come in here, hit the cogwheel again, and we can scale this up. But now you can see, look how much cleaner that topology is. It's all quads, easy enough to do. And if we go back to the cogwheel, notice it was orange. If we go back to it, that orange cogwheel is telling you that there is a deformer or some sort of, you know, manipulator in play. So here we can actually come through and adjust how much we would like to have for edge loops. So I can say something like this. This way it's nice and even. I get a middle center line, which will give me symmetry options. So something like this would be good. And then if we go back to the gizmo and just switch back over to this, now we can adjust this as necessary. So this is how we can kind of place our front switch. And we can just kind of bury that into the model and just place it wherever we want. Because it's a handle, maybe we're going to be facing it a little bit lower, say something like this. And now this gives us a little bit of an easier thing to work with, so it's not so much, nice and clean. And let's go ahead and hit save. Yeah, me too, comics. Yeah, me too. Let's see here. We have a question here that says, hello, can we have the pen besides gravity steering slider be controlled by the pen tilt? I feel like tilt sensitivity is not utilized in sculpting workflow. That is a great idea, and that's something that we are looking at in order to how we can play and manipulate that for what we're doing. What you can do so far is you can hover over a slider or an indicator, like let's say draw size, and you can actually, with Apple Pencil Pro, you can twist. It's a little hard to see, but I'm just literally twisting. At this point, I am twisting to get that different size and also the strength intensity as well. So you can do it like that, But as far as tilting goes, yeah, that's something I think that we have looked at in the past on how we can implement that. But great call out. All right, perfect. And so here, we're going to go ahead and leave that there for now. And we're going to start moving on to some actual ZModeler action here. Now, one of the things that I'm going to put right here in the middle is we do have like kind of like this heatsink thing that I added in the one that I built. And so here, I kind of like the way this looks. It's really neat, and it just gives some good texture to the model. And I really like that. So we're going to go ahead and create something like that and then introduce what's known as a Remesh. So here, let's go up to our subtools. And again, this is where maybe we should start naming subtools as well. So we can go to rename, and then we can call this switch, right? So we'll just call this the switch. And whatever you need to. At the top here, sometimes I go just as simple as just naming it something ridiculous like top. Because as long as it makes sense to you, that's always what's important. Here, we can rename this and call this the stem. It looks like a stem to me. And then here at the bottom, we'll select it, rename this also, and we can call this Pommel. If I spell things wrong, do not mind me. And yeah, that should be pretty much it for now. Let's go ahead and hit save. Now we're going to make that heatsink portion. So let's go ahead and, again, we can either just completely bring in a new subtool by coming up here to the plus icon and selecting one of these. But I'm a fan of repurposing the things that I know. So here, if I come to the top, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And let's hit solo down here on the bottom right, zoom in. And we're just going to press and hold Control and Shift. We're going to select this guy. But now we're going to press and hold Alt, which will inverse and hide that object. And then let's just go to our delete hidden, which again, this is located under Tool, Geometry, Modify Topology, and Delete Hidden. But I'm going to be putting it right there. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're just going to end up dragging this down. So let's go to our gizmo down here at the bottom, turn that on, recenter that back to center, and then we can move this. Now this is where we're going to get into our first ZModeler functions. ZModeler, again, very powerful, but you only need to really know a few things to be very successful with it. So the first thing is when you click ZModeler, what you might notice if you've never opened it before is the menu is actually docked underneath it. So if we pick any other brush, you'll notice that there's no menu there for ZModeler. As soon as we click the ZModeler brush, so going back to our all, scrubbing down all the way to the bottom and clicking ZModeler, now you'll notice that there's actually 3 menus there. We have our polygon actions, our edge actions, and then we have our point actions. And they are active all when we need them to be. And you can see here that we got a facelift. If you're used to the ZModeler on desktop, you'll notice that it's just a top menu, a middle menu, and a bottom, and sometimes a modifier, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing here, except for now we've color-coded things. So if it has to deal with modeling itself, it's going to be orange. Topology, it's going to be green. Transform will be blue. Selection will be purple. And then other will just kind of be like more white. So at this point, you can quickly visually see a big difference here. And so we can come through and say, okay, well, what we're going to need is go to our edge actions. We're going to go to Insert. And we have, of course, single edge loop automatically defaulted. And what I'm going to do is I'm normally just going to select where I would like this to be. I would come here and drag this up and kind of eyeball this and drag this down and create something that's going to eventually have a bevel to it. But however, there's actually been a change to that. So if I click that edge action and I scroll down to the bottom, you'll notice that there's a snap modifier. And here I can actually adjust a half. So I can go ahead and just start dragging and it will snap to that half point. I can go to a quarter. So then I can start dragging, and every quarter step, it will go ahead and snap to that, making that a lot easier. And also, too, we can do a custom where you can actually pick up to 10 sections where you would like that to snap. So if you need something a little bit more fine-tuned than even just quarter, you can say, okay, every 8th step here, boom, 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 boom. That way, you just get something nice and even all the way throughout, which is really, really helpful. You can still go to your multi-edge actions and then just start dragging in, and that will give you even steps as well, so completely up to you. You can also long press any one of these and actually access your My Presets. So if I were to come up here, let's say I would like to do the multiple edge loops, but I also want to make sure that the polygroup is kept the same, and we'll leave it like that. If I hit the plus icon, I can name this, call the stream multi, because I already have one saved, but I can just say save, and now there it is on the top. And so if I long press that menu, stream multi, there it is. And now if I start using it, all of my settings are there. So this will be really simple, fast, and easy way for you to constantly work once you start creating more of your presets. And you can see here I have a few presets for QMesh. I have a few presets for the move as well. So it makes it really easy to go back and forth. If this menu is in the way, you can just long press this section here and drag that off, which is typically where I have it. And that will help you as well. Can you import brushes from PC to the iPad version? Yes, absolutely. So any brush that you've made that is supported on the desktop, so that's VDM brushes, that's ZModeler brushes, that's sculpture brushes, curve brushes, they can all be brought over from PC to the iPad. The way you'd want to do that is, if you're on Mac, it's a little bit simple. You can airdrop brushes to yourself. But if you are on PC and you're going to iPad, the easiest way is to plug in an external hard drive, and then you can access that by coming in here to import, going down to your brush, and select the file, and then find your hard drive, and then you can actually bring in those brushes. And you can see here, I have a ton of brushes that I've purchased or downloaded over the years. So some Shane Olson brushes, some friend brushes, some of my own custom brushes, etc. So all that can be added in, and you can just find wherever that is on your iPad. And it's accessing the actual files menu. So if you've never opened the Files app before, all Apple devices have one. You can find it by default. Just type in Files in the app and you can see, and then you can access things on your iPad or anything else. And that's where that accesses. And you can also save that stuff too. So you don't just have to import them there, right? What you can do is go to My iPad, go to your ZBrush folder, and you can see here that we have we can see here I actually have some noises that are done. But if you go to ZBrush Files, nope, not that one. If you go to, where is it? No, Z Startup. There we go. Thank you. Z Startup, brush presets. You can see that's where all the brushes are loaded. And so I have SK brushes or brushes. All those brushes were on the PC. I brought them over to the iPad. So that's an easy way. Then they load up automatically. So if you actually see when I come through and open up the menu and I go to all brushes, you can see the Shane Olson brushes. You can see all the custom brushes. If I scrub down far enough, you can see all of like some Pablo Munoz brushes that I downloaded, etc. They all load for you, just like you would on the PC. So there you go. All right. So here we just went ahead and did the ZModeler. We got some extra edge loops. I'm just going to add a couple. I really don't need too much. And then I'm going to drag a few more on the top here. Let's hit solo so you can see what's happening. And then what's cool about ZModeler, if you didn't know, is once you've dragged out a certain amount, so if I go ahead and say like, yeah, I had this edge loop, drag this out, up and down will give you more or less of the edge loops. So if I say that's good, I can repeat that action by just tapping one time on the opposite side, and that gives me the exact amount of edge loops on that I put on the top on the bottom, which makes things a lot simpler. Now to get rid of a edge loop, all you need to do is press and hold Alt and delete this one and delete this one. And there you go. We just went ahead and just made the first part of our heat sink. Now this looks a little thick to me, so I'm just going to bring the Gizmo and scale that down a little bit and say something like this. And I'm just going to kind of place this something that makes a little bit more sense. Now there are two ways to duplicate this. I'm going to hit save. There's two ways to duplicate this. So the first way, which is the kind of more archaic, brute forcey way, which I do a lot. This is kind of a thing I do a lot. It's just what I showed you already with the control drag duplicate. I'll just control drag, holding control until I think the spacing is nice. And then the trick is, instead of just doing that once and letting go and being like, oh, okay, there it is, that's the position. Press and hold control, drag it to where you think you like it. And while you're still holding the arrow on the gizmo, let go of control, and then it will evenly space however many that you want. And then this will give you this, and then you can clear that mask, right? Set this in the middle, and then you can readjust this, and you can do whatever you want. However, the problem with this is that it's kind of destructive. And we want a non-destructive workflow. Maybe we actually end up wanting to edit this mesh and affect all other meshes. So the easiest way to do that is Array Mesh. So if we open up our tool menu and we go to Array Mesh, here we can actually turn on our Array Mesh. We want to click the transpose button because what this is going to do is it's going to use the gizmo as the driver for the effects that we're going on. And then we also want to lock the position because we like to keep things right now in the center. We're just going to just offset all of this in the single direction. So here with the Array Mesh turned on, now however we affect it, it's going to do what we ask it. So here if we go to the repeat function, notice by default it's set to 2. That's just an easy way to see when you start moving things. We can adjust this number whenever, but we set it to 2 because usually you're using Array Mesh to duplicate your object. So here, I'm just going to pick an odd number. 7 is always nice. And now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down until we see some different menus here. We have offset, scale, rotate, and pivot. Now they all do exactly what you think they're going to do, right? If we have an offset, I can choose the X, Y, or Z axis to actually adjust the offset of this object. So in this case, I said I wanted to repeat this model 7 times. And of course, if we know the ZBrush axis, so X, if we have the gizmo guy facing us, then we have the x-axis from screen left to screen right, that is x, and then y is up and down, and z is depth, z depth, hence the name ZBrush. So here, if I choose the y and I just go to offset and I start moving this around, it's now going to adjust the position of this in even spacing as a preview. And if I move the gizmo, you can see now with that locked position, it's going to move with it. So here I can make some adjustments and say like, well, okay, how tall do I want this to be? Okay, I'm giving it like negative 12.297309. Like that number is arbitrary, but we can just type in, be like, you know, I want an even number. So let me just go negative 12. Boom, done. Even numbers work for you, so you can do something like that. But now we can go back to repeat and we can say, okay, well, how many of these did we actually want? Okay, 12 seems to be a little bit better number. Maybe that's too wide, so let's scale that down a little bit. And then let's go back to Array Mesh, and look, we can adjust further. So say something like this. And now this gives us our kind of first real preview of what Array Mesh can do for you. And what's nice about this is at any point in time, if we just hit solo, if we choose to modify this, maybe when we want to add an edge loop that's extruding out from the side here. So maybe I want to go to my edge loops and I want to affect the actual selection set. So I'm going to go with Polygroup, right? And if I go ahead and click this edge here, that's great. Now let's just go to presets. Actually, let's not go to presets. Let's close that. Let's go to, there we go. I zoomed out accidentally. So let's go to our presets on our faces and actually choose the QMesh all, because that's just going to QMesh for me. And I can drag this out and see now everything gets affected. So at some point in time, you can actually really adjust this however you need to. Or maybe we want to push this in a little bit and create some different shapes. Whichever works for you, but this is basically the way to really kind of come in and get some nice adjustments. Or we can just control the fall off a little bit, which all I really did here was I went to Edge Actions, and then I went to a single insert with just no snapping. We turned off snapping for this. But again, we can keep snapping on if we want, but I'm so used to just kind of eyeballing a couple of supporting edge loops. And the reason why I'm doing this is, you notice what I did on the top here. I added some edge loops just, here right by the actual edge of it. If I were to subdivide this or go to geometry, and let's actually turn on dynamic subdivision, which what this will do is give you a preview of 3 subdivision levels. If I turn this on, notice the bottom really rounds out a lot. But now the top is giving me kind of a nice soft fall off, but still providing an edge. This is actually something that I like to do, and it just helps a little bit keep things a little bit more clean. And just kind of like, I guess, giving you that nice control that you can have. So this is one way. I like doing this. This is more of a habit for me. There is another way you can actually, control edge shape, and that is with crease edges. And the easiest way to do that is to hover over, and like you have your edge here. Let's go to our edge modifier, and then let's choose crease. Was I hovering over it? No, it's down here under topology. Go to crease, and we're going to just go complete edge loop. And now if I click this, and I click this part, and I click here, right, just clicking one time, what that's going to do is now if I subdivide this, so let's go back and turn on dynamic subdiv, notice that this is nice and sharp, turning off the polygroup, and it's nice and smooth. So those are a couple ways you can do it, but I don't like having just sharp edges on everything. So something to keep in mind is if we go to Tool and turn off dynamic subdiv, and then let's go into Crease. So each one of these menus controls a different function. And so because of this here, what we want to do is we have this thing called a crease tolerance and a crease level. Now, at every 45-degree angle, the crease tolerance that's what is going to stay creased. If it goes beyond that, then it's going to soften. Here, we can actually adjust this to say 25 degrees. And then the crease level down here is actually subdivision levels. So I can say, all right, anything past subdivision level 2, when I subdivide, I want you to start taking those creases and giving it a little bit of softness. So if I come to the bottom and I open up my quick menu, which is subdivide, if we zoom in here real quick, we can see. So if we go to divide once, divide twice, it's still really sharp. Divide 3 times, it's starting to give you a nice fall off. And this is also being just driven by the array mesh. And so this also gives really nice reflections because, again, sharp edges don't reflect. So having a nice little rounded edge will give you a nice reflection at the end of the day. Now, I know I just dumped a lot, so let me check on the chat. Let's see here. First question, do you use a keyboard or remote with iPad, ZBrush, or fingies only? Great question. I only use my fingers. When we first were alpha testing ZBrush for iPad, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was make sure that I could actually just sit on my couch, break away from the desktop, and just sculpt. So I do fingers only when I am on the iPad. What's the polygon limit for one subtool on iPad? That's a great question. The way you can find that out actually is going up here to the user settings. It varies per iPad. So the stronger the iPad, the better resolution you're going to get from that. And if I remember right, under memory, there you go, your polygon memory limits. So mine is set by default to 89.7. So that's 89.7 million, if I remember right. So yeah, you can get about 90 million per subtool. That's quite high. And so you can adjust that limit though. You can tell yourself, like, I only want 50 million per subtool, but it was set to by default to 89. That is just going to be dependent on how powerful your iPad is. Great question. Let's see. Thank you for your stream. How does the iPad handle the work in high poly phases when not plugged in charged? Great question. And it handles it really, really well. I'm only plugged in right now because I'm actually sharing on my computer, which is then streaming this for me. I tend to, I get about like 3 to 4 hours on a full charge. And I can do a lot of work in that time, and then I end up just kind of putting it down. But the battery is still quite nice. So you can go quite high. If you, let's go ahead and save real quick. I'll give you some examples of some of my early works with this. Just warning, hopefully you guys don't mind clowns. But if I go to my sculpts here, maybe I won't pick the clown one. Let's pick one of the newer ones. I picked this Orlockenstein. So I did this concept for Monster Palooza, and he's actually quite low for what he is, but he's 27 million vertices, and he's really, really nice and detailed. If I were to go into this mimic that I did, I'm avoiding the Art the Clown one just in case. I don't want to scare anybody. I like horror things. So this one was about 15 million. The first, so you can see here is like a toon shaded sculpt that I did. We could just let's go press and hold shift, and I can turn off all the poly paint. So you can see it gets quite nice. This is 15 million. The very first sculpture that was done on ZBrush for iPad was that dragon that you might have all seen by Lucas Swinka, and it was 125 million vertices in total. So you can get a lot with what you're going on. Great stuff. Hi, I'm having problems while DynaMeshing a mesh. No matter how much resolution I set or increase, the size of polygon is not increasing. Can you help me? Yes, the storyteller. That's actually a really common one, and it's actually quite easy. So if we just pick the sphere for just a second, and then we'll get back to the Saber. Here, if we look at the mesh here, and I go ahead and turn off DynaMesh, turn it on, nothing happens. If I come into DynaMesh and I increase it, and then I go control drag, nothing happened. What is happening? Well, that is because DynaMesh detected 0 changes to your mesh. As soon as I do a change and then control drag, now that DynaMesh recalculates and readjusts to your new settings. This works both on PC and on iPad exactly the same. So the thing to remember here is, let's say you have a big model and you've made some changes, and those changes aren't taking effect. Just quickly smooth a small section and then re-DynaMesh, and you'll be fine on that. Something to note about DynaMesh real fast, small tangent, but if you scale it up and re-DynaMesh, that is a change. And if you scale it down and re-DynaMesh, that is also a change. But just know the smaller the object, the less vertices you're going to get. The larger the object, the more vertices you're going to get. So just to point out a difference, this is 500. Currently at its size is 2.7 million vertices. If I scale this down, now all of a sudden it's 123,000 vertices. So it just depends on the size of it and the changes that it detects at the time. Great question. Okay. Awesome. All right, I'll take one more question, and then we're going to go back to building this lightsaber, because we are finishing this, by the way, on stream, and we're already an hour in. But I just like the question, so there you go. What do I miss about ZBrush on iPad that you have on PC? I currently miss Scale Master. It's a little bit harder to adjust scale inside of the iPad version. So that's one of the things I miss. Not a problem, Maria. Okay, let's get back to the lightsaber part. Now, we're going to have some fun here, and this is where we're going to really be diving into kind of carving the look of it. We've already got our nice little heatsink here with our array mesh, and we're going to leave this as such. We're not going to adjust this any further because I want to kind of move on to some other things. And one of the things we're going to do now is the top portion of this. So I will be breaking this section off, so pressing Control-Shift. And now notice I have the selection, the select lasso section done. One of the things I didn't cover that I should cover right now is if you press and hold Control, I want you to pay attention to the bottom menu right here. The bottom menu is the brush menu. If I press and hold Control, it actually changes from seeing my top favorite brushes in ZBrush down to only masking. And if I slide to Control-Shift, now that's going to show me just selection brushes. And that's really important to remember. So here, I'm going to press and hold Control Shift, and I'm going to pick the Select Rec, and I'm just going to select this top portion. And then with my quick menu, we're just going to go ahead and, do I have a split? I do have a split hidden. Again, that's under Subtool, split, split hidden, but I have a quick menu for that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to really define the top of this. And everything I've showed you up until the end of this will absolutely be every tool you need to finish making the lightsaber. It's now about just finessing and playing with it. So in this case here, I'm going to open back up my ZModeler brush. So if you've opened up a brush before in the same session, if I go to my brush on the left-hand side and then open up recent, every brush I've selected within the last sessions will be there. So I'll say, oh, there's in my ZModeler brush, really simple. We can create custom brushes, and I can show you guys that more at the end. Sorry, custom menus for your brushes, which I'll show you at the end so we don't deviate too much. But that is possible there, which you can just have them and select from that section. So here, again, I like to work with polygroups. So I'm going to go to my tool menu. I'm going to go to my polygroups, and I'm going to say I would like to group by normals. So let's come back over to group by normals. This will give me a different polygroup for every section. And what we're going to do is now just kind of redefine this bit. So I'm going to actually shrink this just a little bit. There we go. And now hovering over the front face, what I want to do is actually kind of give it, I want to give it a hole. So then it looks like the actual, what the Saber part of it's going to be coming out, the lights or the plasma or whatever we're making. So here, I'm going to go press and open up the edge menu. And what we're looking for is Inset. Actually, not the edge menu. I apologize. We're going to go to the Polygon action, and we're going to go to Inset. And by default, down at the bottom here, we have, this is my favorite word in the whole wide world, and I totally make fun of myself for struggling with this one, equivalent distribution. I'm going to click this and go to custom, and I'm going to slide this to 0.25. It's the max it can go. The reason for this is because when this is at 0.03, which is its lowest number, what ends up happening is at some point in time when you use Inset, and let's just hide this menu, when you use Inset and you come through, it actually insets on that one poly group, right? But if things are really, really tight, and this might be a little hard to mimic here. Yeah, it's not a good example. But what ends up happening at some point is it ends up being it kind of like crunches a little bit, and it doesn't give you good results. So I find that if we adjust that slider to 0.25, then it makes it a lot simpler. And also, too, we want to affect all of the polygons on that poly group. So we're going to say all polygons. If you scroll, no, sorry, not all polygons. We're going to say polygroup all. There we go. Even I make mistakes. So we're going to say polygroup all because we want to affect all the polygons in that poly group. So then we can get something that looks like this. And that's how you can adjust that. And let's make this a preset. So we can call this stream inset all. Again, just something that reminds me of what it is. There we go, because I think I might have done that already. There it is. And now what I can do is I can come through here, and I'm going to pick a kind of a border section, and then I'm going to pick a middle section. Now, notice that when I did this, it changed my poly group. And then when I did this again, it duplicated the poly group on the outer ring, but on the inner ring, it changed it. Well, I don't want that because I want these to be controllable. I want to control this group separately than this outer group. So what you can do is when you're doing Inset, just tap Alt, and that will change its poly group. And so now I can say something like this works for me here. Now, if I wanted to press and hold the polygon action and go back to QMesh, I can. And now I'm just extruding this one section. And tapping Alt while I'm dragging it will also change poly group. So it's a really cool function for that. And so there we go. And now what I'm going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to extrude this up, and we're just going to tap Alt until we get kind of like that blade portion of it, right? Or the part where the blade comes out. And now from here, what I'm going to do is we're just going to do a Inset. So let's go back, long press for the custom menus and go back to the stream inset all, and now we're going to go ahead and do this portion. Now, something to kind of note, and this is really cool, is if we hit solo mode, let's say I want to create a hole all the way through the middle of this portion. And what we can do is we can literally just come in and create a similar hole. It doesn't have to be the exact same size if you don't want to, but just needs to be close enough. If you want a true straight line, you absolutely want to have it be the exact same. So you want to have the same count. But for this, it's okay because that part's going to be covered up essentially by this. So we just want to make sure that it's close enough. And then with that same polygroup coming through, this is the power of QMesh. So if I open up our menu and I go to our QMesh, our polygroup all, this is actually going to, instead of just extruding like it normally does here, we're going to go ahead and push this all the way through. And that will actually detect the edge loop on the other side, creating a hole. So if I double 2-finger go back, that will delete that one. 3-finger redo, it just pops through and creates that hole for you. And this is just a nice little way to get that hole if you would like to have something like that. So recapping real quick, we want to have QMesh with polygroup select all to then make sure that we can do the extrusion on each of our polygroups. We created a inset with an inset preset as well, which will help you create the different polygroups and different edges. And you'll be able to select those by long pressing any time. And now from here, we're going to want to give it a little bit of shape. This is where I deviated from the original lightsaber that I was referencing. Where is it? When I was looking at the Luke one. Okay. What happened? What happened? There we go. Weird. Anyway, when I was looking at, where are we at? When I was looking at this guy, because then I started noticing other elements of sabers. And one of the things that I noticed was, you kind of get to just do whatever you want. And this is where I kind of challenge you guys as well. If you're watching even after and you're just following along on YouTube, this is something where like you get to kind of play a little bit. And they have different shapes. And this is where I challenge you to don't just strictly follow along, but also create kind of some other elements. Lightsabers are typically, the props are made on like lathes in the early days and then kind of slapped together, little assets here and there, and they're very round, they're very cylindrical. So I like to try to challenge myself and deviate a little bit from that. But I noticed that there's some cool elements that differ from saber to saber, which is great. So when we're playing with this, one of the things that I did on the one that you can download is I used Radial Symmetry and created some custom elements. And so again, the importance of this being truly centered is what we're going to do is let's go ahead and hit save. There we go. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to open up our tool menu. Nope, scratch that. Let's go to our global symmetry. There's a global symmetry button right here. If we turn this on, this is defaulted to x-axis. And if we turn it off, it's just asymmetrical. There we go. If we long press global symmetry and we turn it on, we actually get radial symmetry, X, Y, Z, and a radial count as well that we can really focus on. So you can pick which area you want to affect and which model. So pretty simple stuff. So here I can go ahead, long press this and say radial count of 8. That's totally fine. And then it will affect the different sides of things. Now, if your model is not truly center to things, then it won't always affect. We also want to affect the right one. So let's turn off the x-axis and turn on y. There we go, because that is what we're trying to affect here. So we can actually come in here and affect different portions of this model. And what we can do now is we can press and hold Alt and create temporary polygroups. And so here I can go ahead and say, like, I want these sections to be affected. We can also make sure that we're keeping the model as symmetrical as possible. There we go. And then now with that temporary polygroup, again, that's just pressing and holding Alt and tapping the different polygroups we want to keep. I just chose to do here at 8. And then what we're going to do is we're going to long press this and go back to our stream inset. And here we can make some fun little shapes. And I'm going to deviate from what I showed in the actual downloadable model. You long press, go to QMesh all, and we're just going to kind of pop this in, pressing and tapping to give us a different polygroup. And like I mentioned with the actual edge loop, if I just touch it again, it will repeat that action for us, giving us something that looks a little bit more like this. And this is something that, a nice way to give you some custom shapes and give you some really fun stuff. This is where you can have a lot of fun with your model. Very cool. And again, turning symmetry on and off just by clicking this button, long pressing symmetry to open those options up. Let me see if I missed anything in the chat. Ian, is the ZBrush industry the industry standard for modeling, or would something like 3ds Max or Maya? Sorry if somebody has already asked this. That's a great question. So ZBrush is an industry standard, absolutely, for modeling and for sculpting. It's just a different type of modeler, but it is industry standard, yes. Awesome. You did try that too? Okay. Oh, that's for another thing. Okay, great. Awesome. So now that we have this, let's actually give us a little bit more flair using some cool, using those same features and giving us some cool effects here. So what we can do is let's just long press the edge. And again, this is where you kind of get to play a little bit of stuff. So stream multi, I'm going to add in a couple different edge loops here. And I'm going to repeat this down at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to add a few more, say something like that. This is just going to give me some nice topology. This is where you can kind of add in your own topology where you think you need it in order to give you some good resolution. Keeping clean mesh, sometimes that can be fun when we're modeling stuff. But you don't want to add unnecessary edge loops unless you think you need it. And so here, I'll add one there just on the safe side. Okay, we'll talk about keeping sharp edges with creasing here in a little bit. But now what I want to do is I actually want to ultimately add in some, what looks to be like some ventilation holes. And I don't want these to go all the way through. I just want to add something. It's more for like texture, right? So we're going to go to point. And under point here, we're going to pick split. And you can pick a point or a ring. And what split will do is if I hover over a point and I drag, it's going to give me this kind of hole effect. Or it's going to give me it's going to split that point into like a ring, which then I can extrude down. So, and of course, I don't want to repeat that multiple times all the time. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to geometry. So we're going to go to symmetry, turn that on. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to use radial symmetry on the y-axis, and we're just going to go ahead and add a few. And then here we're just going to QMesh this down, tap Alt to give us a different polygroup, and tap that one more time. And that will just give us some ventilation. So if we look at this as a whole and we turn off the wireframe, it's just giving us a little bit of like that kind of variety. There we go. Now, I'm an advocate of not staying in one place for too long, so we're going to kind of move on. But this is something that you can do and play with. And now let's Alt tap this little section right here. And we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to make this skinnier just because I want this to be a bit thinner. Say something like that. There we go. Now, there's another thing that we can do is figuring out the bottom portion of this. If we look at some of the other Sabers, and go back to the original one that we were looking at, which is Luke's, it's one of my favorites. Where is it, Bone? You can see here, there's this like stepping effect. This is actually really simple and easy to achieve, where it goes from one section to another. And so we can kind of get something very similar to that really quickly by going back to this top piece just for a second and coming in here. And now let's go to our edge loop and let's go to our polygroup. And you can see we're using very similar tools. And now I'm going to go ahead, let's turn symmetry off for a second. Let's just go ahead and pick a new polygroup. So click that edge. Should be fine, something like this. And then with QMesh already selected, we can drag this down. And and we can drag this down again. Now, what's cool about this little thing that I'm showing is that, see, I dragged this down originally just a little bit like that, and then I was like, oh, I want that to be further. Instead of just dragging and creating a new edge loop, one of the things you can do is while you're dragging, you can just go ahead and press and hold Shift, and that will extend that selection. So you can make that a little bit longer. If I press and hold Control, it'll actually break off that piece and give me something different. So if I press and hold Control, start dragging, press and hold Control, it'll actually break off a section. That's not what we want though. For this, we just wanted to start dragging this out, press and hold Shift, and then drag that down. And so that will just give us a little bit more of that step. And then we can come in here and we can adjust this guy to make a little bit more sense and have that part be detached. Say something like this. There we go. There you go. And let's go ahead and hit save. And so now we can start seeing that things feel a little like bottom heavy immediately because our proportions are a little bit off on everything. So we're going to want to adjust this a bit. Again, this is why blockout is important, because you just kind of get an idea and then you start refining. So here the top looks a little small and this whole portion looks small. So if we press and hold Alt and tap this, we can pick the handle, and let's turn on the gizmo. And then let's unlock the gizmo and recenter this and relock the position. Now, this isn't really hard surfacey, this is just ZBrushy, where we can select multiple subtools at the same time and manipulate them as needed. So here what I can do is I can press this this little Pizzabox here, which is actually called Transpose All Selected Subtools, which is just a mouthful. So we nicknamed it the Pizzabox. And if you press Control and Shift by clicking Shift and dragging to Control, you can actually come through and select the objects you want to manipulate. And then what we can do is we can literally just kind of rescale this and move it however we see fit. And if you don't like something that's been selected, right, you can actually just press and hold Control, Shift, and retap that, and that will actually then deselect that. And you get this kind of anti-aliasing effect happening. And again, we can rescale this and reposition this as needed, giving us something that's a little bit better. And I actually like that a little bit more. There you go. And let's go ahead and hit save. Let's see here. I want to take a question real fast. Hello, I just purchased the iPad for modeling in comfort places. I have noticed some differences and similarities, and I know for a fact that you can repeat the command shift, but how in iPad? You mean the shift S, the command shift S, but how in iPad? So the spotlight stamp by pressing shift S was actually not defaulted in iPad. Because 2.5D has not been fully implemented, but there are times in which it happens on accident. And so to clear that, or Control N, just go up to your user settings, go to Canvas, and then go ahead and say clear, and that will clear that. It does happen sometimes when it happens. If you do have a keyboard connected, we do support keyboard on iPad. So if you have a Bluetooth keyboard somewhere, you can actually use that, and then that I haven't tried Shift S on it, but you can give it a shot and see if that works. Okay. Hey, ATD films, yeah. Oh, I tried to break it down as simple as possible so everybody can get it. I know sometimes I jump around a little much. That's just my crazy brain and how I think. So hopefully that's not too jarring, but you know, I try to make it as seamless as possible. So moving on, great questions, by the way. One of the things that we want to talk about, of course, is that more radial symmetry, like I did up here at the top to get these kind of like nice little vent holes and things like that. We're going to do something at the bottom very similar. So if I solo this, and then I go ahead and turn on the wireframe, right? If I press and hold, and I turn on the symmetry, notice the radial symmetry is now turned off. That is because radial symmetry is only activated if I turn this back on, it is per subtool. So every time you set up radial symmetry, it's per subtool. And the reason for that is sometimes you're going to want radial symmetry turned on, and other times you're not going to want it turned on. And so it's important to know that if you turned on radial symmetry on one subtool, and then you're like, oh yeah, you expect it to be on here, just know that it is not going to be on by default. You'll just want to reset that up because it is per subtool. And so because of that, we're going to hit solo mode here. And again, with radial symmetry turned on, if I press and hold Alt and I tap, I'm going to get my selected, or my temporary selection sets here. Now for something like this, what I'm going to do is, let's keep this on for a second. I'm going to, oops, what we want to do is, I'm kind of, at this point, what I'm needing to do is, I want to get like kind of that handle portion built that I showed on the first one. And I like a little bit of that texture on it. Now, here's the thing to remember is that at the moment, the way things are rotated, when I select the temporary selection sets, I'm selecting 8, and that's not keeping things truly center. So if you ever need things to be truly center, you can actually just go ahead and start rotating and press and hold Shift, and that will snap every 15 degrees. So if you select things and you're like, oh, okay, that's a lot better, I just wanted to do that, then it's easy enough to just quickly rotate and then reset the gizmo, and then you can have things as center as you want. So in this case, you know, all I really needed to do was just kind of, you know, quote, pick the right one, so to speak, but that was kind of, you know, no big deal. So all I'm doing is just kind of rotating this and then resetting that. That is so, just because my brain likes to keep things even in a way if possible. So I'm just gonna, oops, go back there. Let's control, there you go. Unlock, reset, and hit that position. There you go. This way it keeps it as down the middle as possible. Or just select the right ones, which is something that I don't do. Okay, now that trick I just showed you, right, with the QMesh, right, I can press and hold Control, and I can break this section off. And the reason why I want to do that is because I'm going to want some of these portions to be a little bit different, and I'm going to want to have some features like NanoMesh that's purposely only on this one subtool. So I'm going to just go ahead and, as I QMesh, pressing and holding Control, which will break that off. Do not worry about how far you extend that. Just know that it is removed. And then press Control, drag your finger to Shift, and then you can touch the polygroup that you need. So we're just going to go ahead and select this guy. Control Shift drag to invert that. Go to our subtools and say split hidden. There we go. And now if we Alt Tab, we'll get this guy here. Now this is single-sided geometry, and we're going to want to give it some thickness. And the easiest way to do that, this might seem a little bit backwards, but this is also a way to help troubleshoot flipped normals. So I'm going to show you on purpose. But if you QMesh, you don't just have to QMesh in a positive direction. You can actually QMesh in a negative direction. And why would you want to do that? Well, you can see here, I can actually see when I'm QMeshing, yes, the normals are flipped, but how deep am I actually going inside of the previous model? Because I do want these to overlap for the sake of this demonstration. So I can see just how far that is actually being implemented. And so I can say something like that. But now how do I correct the flipped normals part? Like, we flipped them. Good job, Ian. No worries. So we're going to go ahead and go to our tool menu, and we're going to scrub down to the bottom until we see display properties, and we're going to hit flipped, and that flips the normals back in the correct direction. This is also on the PC version, and sometimes what will happen is, you know, you may have accidentally turned on double. If you're looking at double-sided geometry, you're trying to see everything, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks good. But you didn't realize those normals were flipped, and you turn double off. Then you can flip the normals, and those are ways to see it. So there are cases in which you use double. In this case, we just wanted to see how deep something was, and then we quickly flip the normals into the right direction. And that will give us something like this. Great, wonderful, yay. And now with radial symmetry turned on, let's go ahead and give us some topology. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's go into our multi-stream edge loop, and let's just give it some edge loops. There we go. And if you've been following along with me and you got this far, first off, congratulations, pat yourself on the back. Second off, and I'm being serious about that, it's not, I promise this is not satire. Really, that's awesome, you know, because again, like being able to kind of, you know, play in a more and model in more of a conceptual way really helps us just kind of be more artist. And that's one of the things that I love about this. And so if you got this far, seriously, give yourself a high five. It is worth noting. And save. 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 That's important. Because now we're going to move into the next step, which is NanoMesh. NanoMesh is one of my favorite features. It's super cool. There's a lot of little things with it. And I promise you by the end of this, you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that. Especially on very repeated cylindrical type objects, NanoMesh is going to be awesome. So what is NanoMesh and how do we use it? Nano. That's for you, Paul. Okay, so NanoMesh is a feature that allows you to use a NanoMesh brush and actually manipulate where the actual geometry of that brush goes. So basically, it's a IMM brush that is converted into a NanoMesh brush. So if we come to our brushes and click I on the menu, we have a ton of IMM brushes. So if I were to press this IMM industry standard, which yes, that is what I used, and I come over and I just select any area and I drag this out, boom, there you go. Defaulted, I'm getting a bolt head or a flat head. There you go. Okay, that's cool. Or a cotter pin. Or you get the gist, the crown nut. But one of the things you might be noticing is that ZBrush is vertice based, meaning every vertice inside of ZBrush is how all detail is captured. And every time I sculpt, whether I'm using a curve brush, NanoMesh brush, whether I'm using a sculptural brush, it doesn't matter. ZModeler excluded because it accesses face, vertice, and edge loops. But it's every other brush is going to pick a vertice to work off of. And that is where NanoMesh comes in, because NanoMesh can make me have the power of IMM, but put it on a polygon. So what I want to do is I want to convert this into a NanoMesh brush. So I want to open up the brush menu, and with the selected brush that I have, come up here to brushes under the 3 cogs, and you can say create NanoMesh brush. And that will turn this IMM brush into a NanoMesh brush. And that is the most important step in doing that. Now, I did create a YouTube short on NanoMesh brushes, and I will pull that up right now because I want you guys to be able to pull this at any point in time. So let me go to YouTube real quick, and I'll pull that up for you guys because we did make, let's go, Maxon, a ZBrush, NanoMesh short. So I want you guys to have this when you are utilizing it. So something to keep in mind. And I do show it on this lightsaber, which is pretty cool. So if I come here and I just go ahead and paste that. Go ahead, there you go. Boom. That way you guys can have access to that short, which explains it pretty much what I'm going to be doing now, just in case you don't want to drag through the stream. So now I have my NanoMesh brush created. What I need to do is open up my tool menu, and I need to scroll down until I see NanoMesh. Here we go. Now, NanoMesh is a very big menu down here at the bottom. That's okay. What we're going to do is only focus on the things that we need to focus on. First thing to note is with a NanoMesh brush, all I need to do is drag an area and start dragging. And notice that it picked a polygon this time, right? That is what it picked, because that's what a NanoMesh brush gets defaulted to, which is perfect. So let's go ahead and pick a Phillips head, and let's go ahead and drag this out. And don't worry about the size right now. That doesn't matter. Don't even worry about the position right now. That doesn't matter. Wherever you want to put it, it's your model, your brush, that's the way you go for it. So here, I went ahead and selected that. Now it's all symmetrical, all of it. One thing to note is that if you drag and then rotate your pen, you're going to scale going up and down, and then you're going to rotate going side to side. It's so you kind of get that whole like a little vibe to it. Sorry, you kind of scale and rotate. Yeah, there you go. Well, it doesn't matter. It's all going to stay uniform. This is where NanoMesh is going to have a lot of power for you. So if I go back into the tool menu, into NanoMesh, you'll notice now that I have NanoMesh selected. And if I turn this on and off, it's going to go ahead and turn that off. This means that it's a preview. This is something that is really simple and easy enough for you to just turn on and off. It's not actual geometry at the time. And that's important because working with a preview saves actual like hardware. It saves hardware resources. So here I have NanoMesh turned on. That's great. I'm going to scrub down. First button I want to really point out is Edit Mesh. If I click Edit Mesh, right, I can come on down and it's going to give me an Edit Mesh window. And if I hit solo, and if I change any of the geometry here, if I edit this in any way, when I come back to unedit mesh, it's going to have those changes. So let me show you real quick, just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to first turn off the symmetry. I'm just going to quickly do a ZModeler thing. So I'm going to, no. Yes, all right, we crashed it, people, we crashed it, boom. That's why you save. That's why you save. All right, I crashed it. Anyway, let's go back. Didn't like that for whatever reason. No big deal. Let's come back in here. Let's grab our IMM brush. Yes, let's come up here. Let's go ahead and go to NanoMesh. There we go. We're going to turn on our wireframe. I'm going to test something real quick. So welcome to my world. I actually do, you know, when we do testing and stuff like that, this happens a lot. So sometimes I try to repeat my actions. Go to Tool, go to NanoMesh, boom. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, going to hit solo for a second. Now I'm going to grab the ZModeler brush. So I'm going to go to all, scrub on down to ZModeler. There we go. Awesome Blossom. And then here, turn off our symmetry. And what I wanted to do was just quickly just edit this mesh just so you can see that if I were to come through here, let's just go QMesh all, boom. If I edit that, right, and then I come back here and I turn that off, you'll notice that that edit took place the entire time. And of course, you can Control Z that if you would like. So that's where Edit Mesh really comes into play, which is super, super awesome. Yeah, routine, exactly. All right, so Edit Mesh, everything else here, show instance, right? I can show or I can hide what is being created. I can also hide or showcase the placement of that object. This is sometimes useful. Think environments or think temporary areas. Maybe you have to populate the same statue across your whole scene in different locations. You can literally just put flat planes in those areas and then NanoMesh to those planes, and then you can hide the placement and only show the statue. So those are little reasons for that as well. So you can create a whole scene. Let's say you want to create a bunch of grass. You can actually have a whole thing of grass on a single plane, and then you can adjust, and then you don't have to show that plane anymore. You can hide the plane, and the grass is just an instance that is being shown instead of actual geometry. So I guys want you to kind of think of that a little bit more. Let's go ahead and hit save before we go too far. And then let's let my screensaver kick in, and then that kicks me out of this one more time. This is cool. Yes, this is very technical difficulties. All right, one more time. How's everybody doing while I come through and there we go. Boom. All right, there we go. There's a screensaver on my laptop, and it likes to kick off from time to time. Okay, so with the IMM, with the NanoMesh here, you could show the instance, or you could show the placement, or you can show both. In this case, we don't want to get rid of the instance or the placement, but just know those options exist. And then I'm going to let you just ignore these buttons here. Okay. Now, prop, fit, fill, you know, they kind of say what they are. We're going to ignore those for now, because the thing that I really want you guys to focus on is the fact that we can adjust the scale of this, which is really nice. We can also affect the rotation of this. And so if you pick a rotation, we can do X, Y, right? You could type in whatever you need this to be. You can rotate on the X, Y, and the Z axis. So I didn't mean to do that. So here we can come through and start doing rotation. And if you do a rotation of any kind, like in this case, we're doing the Z rotation, So we'd say like 250, boom, or 180. That's all you could do. 180 in one direction, a full 360, right? Whatever area you do, now notice that you have a Z rotation variation. And what that will allow me to do is now I can adjust this line, and now all the bolts start looking like they're turned a little bit differently the more I adjust that. So if I come in here and say like, all right, I want a slight variation on the rotation, and I want a nice big rotation on the variation. Let's actually go this way. Now all of the bolts themselves look a little bit different, okay? And if I wanted to add in another bolt for this, so let's come back here, let's go to Recents and grab my ZModeler, right? Drag this out. Now that's going to create a new instance at that point in time. So you want to first make sure you have all the bolts you have selected, but this is how we do it. So let's go back to the beginning, all the way back. Whee, boop, 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 boop. There we go. Okay, so I went all the way back to the beginning just for demonstration purposes. But here what we're going to do is we're going to make a temporary selection on turning on our radial symmetry. We want to make sure that we are going to pick all of the areas in which we want our bolts. And maybe this time I'm going to go a little crazier, and we're just going to add another row because we're going to need more than this. And now I can come through here and drag them all out because I want them all to be the same. That's super important to me. And then once I do that, go to NanoMesh. Again, we're going to go to rotation. We're going to go to a rotation and then a variation on that. So they all look a little bit different. And then we're going to adjust the size a little bit. There we go. And we're just going to turn this off. And now we have our handle with all of the different bolts that we wanted to. We can also, something to kind of note, maybe that is too much and you want to go a little bit deep, we can adjust the offset of this as well. And we can adjust how deep we want something or, you know, whatnot. So let's pick the right one. There we go. We want Z depth. So let's just come here to Z offset and we can adjust how deep that might look just to give us a little bit. There we go. So it's up to you. This is something that's really just fun and easy enough to do to kind of get that adjustment. And then at this point here, what I'm going to do is if you wanted to finalize this as actual mesh, all you need to do is go down to inventory at the bottom, and then you say 1 to mesh. And then this will turn these into actual geometry. And now it will all be attached to, to the same object. It doesn't split it into a new object. So if you wanted to split things off into a different way, we can actually select a portion of our model here, and then we can say grow all polygroups. You can also do yourself a favor real fast. Let's go to geometry. Let's go to polygroups and go to auto groups. If we control shift and select here, and then we go to visibility, we can say grow to polygroups. And then all the polygroups that are selected, it will grow out to that polygroup. And then that leaves you with all of the other bolts or the Phillips heads all hidden, allowing us to come to split hidden. So that's a nice really way. I don't see a lot of people using this. Anytime you have a ton of like different meshes all brought in, like, you know, we have all of this here selected, and let's say we don't have radial symmetry turned on, I can literally just control select just this one section and then go to my grow to polygroups, and it's only going to grow that one polygroup out, leaving everything else hidden. And that's really powerful. And so it's something to do, especially if you're so used to like trying to perfectly select a certain section. You don't have to do that. Just give it all different polygroup, select that, and then when you say visibility, you say grow to polygroups, and then that will do that. And that's a nice way to split things off quickly. You're amused how ZBrush iPad and computer are so similar? Absolutely. Actually, this is one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, is the fact that we wanted to keep things as simple as possible. So it doesn't really matter if I'm saying, you know, oh, I'm using the iPad or I'm using the computer. While there are going to be some differences in the future, computer will be able to do things that iPad can't and vice versa. It's good to know that we wanted to keep the initial learning steps the same to make it easier for existing artists to go ahead and pick up ZBrush for iPad, but for new artists to come in, and if they ever transferred to the desktop, they wouldn't be so lost. So that was kind of the idea behind it. I'm going to get some water real quick, and we're almost done with our main base Saber. At this point, we're just going to do some fine little details and stuff, but then we've already built the majority of this. And everything that I've showed you up to this point, 100% is just going to be used for the rest of this stuff. We don't have to go too fancy to get what we're looking for. The idea here is that we're making something from start to finish, and we're able to do it in a very artistic way that's just kind of fun and exciting, and the ability to explore. Now, this last part, well, it's not the last part because we still have the switch here, but one of these, one of the parts we're going to go to now, which will be, quote, the most complicated, I think, is the pommel. But it's going to be very similar to what we did here. And actually what we did here, by the way, I'm going to, this is just me nitpicking stuff. I'm going to scale this up just a little bit and extend that out. I want that to be just a little bit bigger. That is just a me thing, but do whatever it is you would like to do. It just feels a little bit better for me. And then I'm going to mask off this top part, and I'm going to drag that up. Perfect. There we go. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, pommel time. Pommel, pommel, pommel. So the pommel itself, I actually pulled reference from, I think it was a Sith Lord Saber. I always like how everything is just so different. And you notice here, like, I pulled this kind of example down here at the bottom, that kind of repeated texture. I pulled that a little bit, but then I can't remember whose Saber it was. It was something like this, yeah. Whereas I kind of like the design being a little bit flat or having some nice little like greeble designs. This is something with hard surface that's super important. And if you're a huge Star Wars fan, you know all about greeble. Greeble is everywhere because it takes a very flat, plain surface, and then it makes it just look more interesting, even though the generic shape didn't change at all. If anything, it's like, look at a TIE fighter's wing, right? And it's just flat, but then it has all of this detail going through. Or look at the Millennium Falcon and just look at the base of it. The ship itself silhouette is cool, but it's a lot cooler when it has all this like random tubing and switches and vibes and things kicked into it. All that greeble just looks really good. And we're going to kind of repeat that here a bit. So we're just going to make some simple changes, which ultimately will bring us to having something that looks cool. So I'm just going to scale this up a little bit, and let's turn on the wireframe. And I'm just going to solo this. We're just going to keep in mind that this is the pommel. Yeah, Star Wars did invent greeble, pretty much, yeah. So here we're going to go to our ZModeler brush. Let's go to ZModeler. Oh, by the way, real fast before I do that, if you want to export out any brush, so notice that we created a NanoMesh brush, and let's say you want to forever keep this NanoMesh brush. What you can do is actually come up here to export, go to brush, and then you can actually change the name of this. So we can call this well, you can call this, yeah, we'll just call this, actually call this Nano Indust Parts. Call it Nano Indust Parts, right? Just for you. All right, and then you can export this out. And then when you export it, you can save to files, and then you can save where you want this to save. So notice I have an alphas thing, an alphas folder. If I come to my iPad and then I go to my ZBrush, right, you can actually save this wherever you want. If you go to Z Startup like before, here's all the brushes. You can save that in here. Some things that I've actually been doing is creating my own folder for things, because I don't always want everything loaded. So I have an Aerosculpts brush folder, and then I would just say save that in there. And then that will be ever saved for you. And you can also export that out to a hard drive and bring that to your PC. So that way you don't have to worry about making that brush again. Although that wasn't very complicated. It's just clicking NanoMesh. So now let's go to our ZModeler. Let's bring this back over here. And then from here, we're just going to create some simple edge loops. So the edge loops I want to create. I'm going to long press this guy and go to Stream Multi. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of edge loop support here and here. And then we're going to go ahead and give it some here. Now, this is just random. I'm not really picking anything that's super useful. I forgot. Every time, that's my fault. The screensaver, I apologize. 1 second. It's looking to be so fancy. Whee! There we go. Yeah. I have to try to remember to come over here and hit this button. Anyway, so that being said, what we're going to do is I'm just making arbitrary lines. They're not important. What's important is it's just giving me some topology to work with. That's all it's really doing. Now, I want to keep this as center as possible, so I'm going to go ahead and press and hold the Alt button, and let's turn Radial Symmetry back on. So we need to go to our symmetry options, long press it, turn off X and turn on Y, turn on Radial Symmetry. And now what we're going to do, and actually let's do something a little bit different. Let's not do 8 count, let's do 4 count. There we go. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to create just some areas of interest. Say something like this. Yeah, that should be pretty cool. Maybe something like this. You can deselect a few, maybe deselect here, maybe select, oops, maybe alt select here. Just trying to keep it even so it matches the vibe of everything. That looks pretty cool. Actually, let's do this one more time. Let's just go around and select this guy like that. There you go. Just areas of interest that look kind of appealing. And all we're going to do now is press and hold the polygon action and go to our QMesh, which is actually pre-selected. And I'm going to go ahead and QMesh this in, pressing and holding Alt, or tapping Alt rather, to give us a different polygroup. There you go. And so now that's going to give us something like this. And now I want to repeat this, but I want to kind of step it a little bit. I do want to do some like step actions. So we're going to go ahead and long press that. If we made our inset all function, we'd select that. If we didn't, and you guys forgot, that's okay. Go to our polygon action, open it up, go to inset, and then go down until we see our polygroup all, and then just turn that off. And then now we're just going to go ahead and adjust the section here. And then we long press this to go back to QMesh. And this is where we're going to just give it a little bit something different. Say something like this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'll tap just to give us something more like this. And I'm just playing around at this point. This is all literally visual. Let's press and Shift, make that a bit bigger. There we go. This is all just to give me something a little bit more interesting. That's all. I'm going to press and hold Shift just to extend that and let go. There we go. Perfect. And then down at the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and press and hold Alt for temporary selections. There we go. And the temporary selections allows me to, again, kind of QMesh things. Now, what I'm going to do here, actually, let's not do that. Let's back up for a second. I just kind of want a lip. I just want a little bit of something different. So press and hold Alt. Again, we're just experimenting at this point. So we're just going to come through, say something like this. There we go. Let's do this on the inside as well. Let's do this like that. Drag this out, press and hold Alt, and do something like this. This is just some visual interest at this point. There we go. If we turn off the wireframe, how does that look? Looks pretty cool. Now, something I haven't really talked about yet, which is what happens if we subdivide this. I mean, we mentioned subdivision a little bit with creases and so forth, but at this time, we're keeping everything super low poly, which is kind of what we want. But at this point, right, let's go ahead and readjust this just a bit. If we were to try to subdivide this, this is where, especially a design like this, might give you some interesting effects. And that's a little too round and so forth. So let's turn the wireframe back on and let's take a look at this. So at this point, I do want to be able to add in some control. And this is where edge loop fall off, like I talked about earlier, using creases and using edge loops, is really up to you on how you want to support the design. I am a sucker of habits, and I really like just being able to come in and add a few of my own on some of these things. So say something like this. and something like this. And this is all going to be for me. You know, this is just something I'm like, oh, this would be kind of cool. What's really fun is I'm actually going to delete this line here and give me something a little bit more like the bottom of a jar, and say something like this as well. I'm going to add in another edge loop and just delete this one. Again, this is just for, you know, because I think it's going to look cool. And I'm going to add some edge loops here. Now we could use creasing for this, but if I were to go ahead and turn on geometry and dynamic subdivision. All right, it says my UVs are out of bounds, but that's okay. We can ignore that. It's out of bounds because the cylinder starts with a UV, and we now manipulated this way too much. So now here you can see, oh, I kind of like how this is falling off. The rest of this is still kind of nice and soft. But this is where what we can do is we can actually go ahead and use polygroups to our advantage to get a little bit more control with this. So let's open up our tool menu and let's go to polygroups, and then let's go to group by normals. And this means that at every 45-degree angle, there's going to be a polygroup change. The reason why we want to do this is now this is where creasing was a little bit more beneficial and a lot more purposeful. And that creasing option means that I'm going to come in here to my geometry, go into my crease menu, and I'm going to crease with polygroup. And then from here, this is where I'm going to say, okay, the tolerance is at least a 45-degree angle for most of this stuff, but I'm going to adjust this down to subdivision level 3. And now when I subdivide, divide, after 3, now it's going to give me a little bit of a subtle, very subtle fall off here. If I divide again, turn off the wireframe, you can see it's very subtle, but it keeps that kind of sharp look to it. And if that's too much, that is a-okay. Let's just come back a little bit before we started subdividing. So we just double tapped back, and then let's come in here and let's say subdivision level 2. Let's try what that looks like. So let's come in here and divide. That's 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, that's looking a lot better. And so again, just really nice, simple way to kind of keep things going consistently. And then from here, we can repeat that kind of crease behavior throughout everything else. Now that we like the way this looks here, I can just repeat that action. So I can go here to crease. And here's something that's kind of cool. Let me see if actually before I say it, because I'm thinking of desktop as well. Yep, I'm thinking of desktop as well. Never mind. Ignore what I was going to say. Yep, because it's on the desktop. If you're wondering what feature I was thinking of, it's called Apply to All Subtools. And I think that's a desktop-only version, which would make things a little bit easier. But that's OK. So here we're going to go to polygroups, and we're going to go to a group by normals, right? And then we're going to go back to our crease option, and we're going to crease polygroups. And then from here, we're going to do the same thing. After subdivision level 3, after subdivision level 2, we're going to come through here, and we're going to make that change. So now, guess what? If we subdivide, divide, now that starts affecting this section here, making things look a whole lot nicer. So this is an easy, very fast way to get some subdivisions, but keep that hard surface look, but also bevel things out really nicely. All right, let's take some questions real quick. Let's going to hit save before we do. Actually, before we do that, let's come up here to this guy right here. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to polygroups, group by normals, and then from there, group by normals. And then from there, let's go to geometry, crease our polygroups, take this to number 2, and then we're going to divide a couple times. Boom, 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 boom. And then that will give us something that's looking more consistent at that point. Very cool. All right, now we're going to look at some questions instead of nitpicking everything. All right, let's see. How do you import brushes and alphas in my ZBrush indefinitely? I kind of showed that, but I can show it again real quick. So whenever, grab a hard drive, something like on the new iPads, it's Type-C connection. So grab a hard drive or a USB that can plug in, or get an adapter to your iPad and plug them in that way. Or you can just, set up like a Dropbox, a Google Drive, dump everything in there, and then you can just directly download. Or if you're on Apple to Apple, you can just literally airdrop yourself stuff, which is really nice. Once you have it on a system that your iPad can recognize, i.e. a hard drive, all you need to do is go to import and import the brushes by going to brush and select file size and find out where that's at. That will import it into ZBrush. But to permanently put things into a folder, what you want to do is go to your Files app and then go to ZBrush. You want to take whatever it was that you need to, so maybe copy. So you copy, let's say that this noise, for example, or actually let's not do that. Let's do this. Let's go to brushes. Let's go ahead to my stitch brush that I created, and I'm going to copy this stitch brush. Okay, and you can copy multiple things. You can come up here to select. Once it shows me my stuff, there you go, please. There you go. You can go to select here, and you can select multiple things, and then you can come on down to more, and you can copy those 2 items. Then you want to back up, go into ZBrush, go into Z Startup, go into Brush Presets, and then from here, just long press anywhere until you see paste, and then paste that. Then you're going to want to restart the app, and then the brushes will be recognized. Great question. Sadly, you have to jump off now, but we'll catch the rest on replay. Thanks for the tutorial, Ian. Really appreciate it. Thank you. No, thank you so much, ATD Films. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of your day/evening. There you go. And so that's how you would do that. To export's the same thing. If you want to export something, come up here to export, pick the brush you want to export, whatever it is you want to do. You can also export, again, it's not just brushes. You can do alphas. Alphas is the same way as what I just showed you. Images, textures, you can bring all that stuff in the exact same way. If you want to do an alpha, go to alpha. For importing, same thing, go to alpha, select file, and then find wherever your alphas are. I have a few here, so if I wanted to bring in a fingerprint, boom, there you go. And actually, I did that for the SpongeBob collab that I did with Patrick 4D. Great question. Is it possible to organize the brushes added into like folders or anything? I did try to do that, and I found that not everything was read. So I did have things into folders originally, but I found that not everything gets read. So unfortunately, no, it doesn't seem at this time, but I will look into that further. But the ones that I do have in the folder, like please, like these dragon scales, let me see. They're in folders. Let's just figure that out now. So if I come here, and I go to what were the names of these? That's important. LC standard. So if I come in here and I go to L, yeah, so you notice that the LC standard is not there for whatever reason. So it's not recognizing brushes at this time, but that could be something that we look at in the future. Great question. What I'd say is just organize by name. That's a really easy way to do it. So, for example, all of Shane Ols's brushes, the 3D Character Workshop brushes that I've used ever since 2019 when I first joined his course. They're easy to find because it just identifies by name. But that's a great thing, and I will note that down. Okay, great. We are almost done here. Are there any other questions? At this point, I want you guys to know that you guys can play with whatever you need to. Just have fun with this. Don't worry too much about like whether or not you guys are like struggling too much. Especially this is designed for being super beginner friendly. Something I want to show you guys real fast that is very beginner friendly. That is just a little bit more of an extension of QMesh, and that is the ability to extend into a new edge loop. So for example, let's say here, notice that on the top part of this is not even. Like my brain is yelling at me because I have an edge loop up here that is not directly attached to this kind of rectangle vent that I created. But underneath there isn't one. So this is off center, and this is driving me nuts. So that's okay, because what we could do is literally come in here and let's just add in a extra edge loop that is as close to what we need as possible, say something like that. And then if we press and hold and we have the QMesh all selected, if I were to drag this out, look at this, it automatically attaches. And if I press and hold shift, it'll extend that. But if I QMesh this out, it's going to go ahead and it's going to it's going to head and give me something like that, which is awesome. But now here's something that's really cool that you may not know, is that this isn't truly flat. Like, this is actually kind of rounded, and it looks weird. Well, what I can do is actually mask off this edge loop. Hold Alt to invert that mask, so everything but this edge loop will be masked off. So let's try that one more time. Press Alt, there we go. So now just that edge loop should be, that edge loop is the only thing that should be affected. So let's come through one more time, select, there we go. So just like that, it's the only thing. So I can make this adjustment. But let's say, again, it's kind of rounded, and I don't like that. So what I can do is I can flatten this. So with everything but this edge loop masked off, what I can do is I can press and hold Control-Shift, and I can go to Clip Curve. And what Clip Curve can do for me is if I drag it out to where the shadow side is facing the area I want to clip, and if I go ahead and just kind of press and hold the space bar and set that where I need to, press and hold Shift to make that straight, it will clip that. It will clip that straight for me, and that's because, there we go, I let go of Shift when I didn't mean to. So one more time, I'm going to rotate it sideways. It's just easier for me to control it. So I'm going to press and hold Control-Shift, use my clip curve, place this where I want, let go, and that will re-straighten that area and clipping everything back. And because it's just the one edge loop that's getting clipped back, there's no like collapsed or overlapping geometry. But that will in turn then allow me to make this so that now those are all very, very similar. And then from here, what I can do is go back to my polygroups, right? And then I can just go ahead and say group by normals, making that the same polygroup. That's one way to do it. Another way to do making another polygroup is literally to come in here to press and hold Alt to make a temporary selection set. There we go. Press Alt to make a temporary selection set. And then if I drag that up and then, sorry, let's do it from this side. Come Alt here, temporary selection set, come on down, press and hold Shift. Now, as I'm holding Shift, everything is turning into that polygroup. This will take a little bit of time, but it's a fun little trick if you need to do a little bit. So press and hold Alt, create a temporary selection set. There we go. One more time. Press and hold Alt, create a temporary selection set. Let go of Alt, press and hold Shift, and just drag. And that will do that. So that's a nice little gem. Or we can just do group by normals, and then from here, we can just quickly go to our geometry, go to Crease, uncrease everything, and recrease only the polygroups. And then that will also just do us a nice solid favor. And now from here, it looks a lot more even, giving me more of what I wanted. Awesome. And you can get as fancy with this as possible. You don't have to go super, super crazy, but whichever works for you guys. Now we're going to go back to our crease options, make sure this is set to subdivision level 2, and that will be good if I subdivide. And now we're going to make the button, and then we're done. And then you guys should have your own lightsaber that you're using. We're running a little bit over time, but I've also answered a lot of questions and so forth. So to go ahead and make our button here, you guessed it, we're just going to use ZModeler, guys. It's really fun. And so from here, we're going to go ahead and turn on our wireframe. And now we're going to do this from scratch. And what we're going to do is kind of repeat, again, reference is key, but we're kind of going to repeat what is going on with this lightsaber, right? There's a little bit of like stepping happening, but we're going to kind of make it our own. So we just kind of want to have some fun with this switch a little bit. So I did a more like kind of like rectangle design. So here, we're just going to know what direction we're facing, which is this way. We're going to hit solo just to focus on this guy. Let's go ahead and make sure we hit save, so then we're not losing any work. And then with ZModeler turned on, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that with our multiple edge loops and our keep groups, so again, pressing and holding and doing the stream multi, I'm just going to go ahead and give me some topology. And if I turn on my symmetry, I can go ahead and give me a little bit more, say something like this. Now, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do an inset control. But before I do that, let's just make our lives easier. And let's go to polygroups and go to group by normals. There you go. And if you want the same polygroup on each side, after you do group by normals, go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and Mirror and Weld. And that will make things, as long as it's center. Why is it not center? Did I not center this? Let's recenter this. I must have gotten off of center, which I'll just blame me for that, because that happens more than I'd like to admit. There we go. So put something in there like that. There we go. So one more time, come in here to our polygroups, mirror, do our group by normals, go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror and Weld, and it's still doing that, which is totally fine. Okay. What you can also do is just literally come through, and let's go ahead, Control Shift, and select our rectangle, and we can just literally grab the two that we want. I'm not sure why it's flipping on us. And then from here, we can just open up our menu and do our, not grow to polygroups, but clear mask. There we go. And now we have the same polygroup on each side. Very interesting stuff. It's probably because I'm just off a little center, and that's okay. No big deal. We could also, instead of doing it that way, so here's another option for you. We could also use dynamic local symmetry. So if I were to turn on local symmetry, and then that means that the gizmo, if it's truly symmetrical here, if I were to go ahead and put spacebar, and then I should be able to mirror and weld, should focus on that, which it's not. All right, well, whatever. Anyway, that is my fault. I can guarantee I did something. Yay! But that's okay. We're just going to select these polygroups, and we're just going to keep it the same. Not grow to polygroups. There we go. There we go. Make sure your model's straight. Don't be like me. All right, so now that we have this, and that way we can just make sure that each polygroup on each side is selected when we're doing symmetry, which is totally fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make temporary selections in the areas that I want to have this panel here. Or actually, you know what we should do? And again, this is just me playing. I'm going to come through here, and I'm going to add more edge loops in these specific spots, because what I want to do is I want to have a lot of these little ones like this. Every other one, I'm just going to come through. There we go. So yeah, it's just not truly symmetrical, which is my fault here. And that's okay. I'm too lazy to want to correct it, but if we keep it the way we should, it should be fine. So now we're going to QMesh this down to say something like this, and this will give me this kind of nice little switch effect just like that. And then here, let's go ahead and add in some edge loops, but I want to add in some single edge loops because I want to bring this to the edge and kind of support these edges on this side. There we go. And the rest of these we can actually support with creased edges. So, or we could just do that as entirely. So you can either come through and do these edges like this, or what you can do is you can, again, repeating what we've already done, you go to our polygroups and we just group by normals, and then we go to our geometry and we go to crease. And this is gonna, again, this is a nice way to do a lot of this stuff. And we're just gonna crease our polygroups. There we go. Very cool. And then from here, what I want to do is actually give it a little bit of a lip and make it look like it's more of a lever than just a flat thing. So I'm going to hover. I keep wanting to say I'm going to hover over my edge loop and press and hold spacebar because I'm so used to desktop. But you don't have to do that. You can do that. You can hover over space. You can hover over an edge face and hit the spacebar like you can on desktop. But it's just so much easier to open up your edge loop and then just select the thing that you need to select, in this case, polygroups, and turn that back off. And now what I can do is by just isolating that, I can just quickly select that, and then I can QMesh that out. And I want these to be different polygroups. So I want to select this one here and this one here. Give me something different. Thank you. Okay, very cool. And then we can just kind of select this one out like that. Say something like this. Gives me a little bit of a switch, and we'll leave this. This is a happy little accident, but I do like how that's actually displaying in that part. And again, we can come through here and do our group by normals to change any of that stuff that we need fit. But now that's going to look a little bit more kind of like what I'm going for, and I can also reposition and even rescale this to fit the scene that I need. And then now on the model that I did, I actually made a triangle button and a circular button. Here we're just going to make the triangle one because the circle one's pretty obvious, but we'll give it like a triangle look for it. So in this case, what we'll do, let's hit save real fast. And let's go ahead to Subtools and let's open up a plane 3D. So now this is probably the least clean way to do it, just a warning, but this is how I end up doing it because it's really, really simple. You can actually do some pretty cool stuff procedurally, but in this case here, I just want to showcase how you can do something pretty down and dirty. And so with this, right, what we can do is we can literally just Control-Shift-Drag and use our knife curve or our slice curve. Boom. And then we can just do something like that, drag a single line, then go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and Mirror and Weld. And then that gives me this, and then Control-Shift-Tap, and then just delete hidden. So go back to Modify Topology, delete hidden, and boom, you have yourself a triangle. And in this case, we're just going to do something like that. And then we're going to give it some thickness. So we're going to go to QMesh, which we already have selected, and we're going to drag this up, giving us something like that. And then we can just place this in our scene wherever we need it to. There we go. Scale that up. And kind of put this wherever we see fit at this point. There we go. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably be like, that topology is not the greatest, and you're absolutely correct. That's okay. But what we can do is let's go ahead and hit save, and then let's go ahead and use the ZRemesher, which we hadn't even really done this whole time because we've just been keeping things nice and clean the majority of the time with ZModeler. And so here we can go to our ZRemesher setting, which, by the way, by default is stored down here at the bottom. But what I want to do is I want to give myself some success. So I want to go to Polygroups. I want to go to Group by Normals, give me something a little bit different. There we go. We're going to turn on our symmetry, make sure that symmetry is turned on because we're going to want to keep things symmetrical. It is a bit of a triangle. And actually, you can do yourselves a favor here too, and you can just divide. We can turn off the smooth option. It's usually by default turned on, but we can turn that off. Divide once or twice, delete it, just to give ourselves some extra topology. And then from here, go to ZRemesher, and then at this point, it's 15. It's like 14,000 or 14,000 vertices. It's not super crazy. So five being 5,000 should be plenty. Let's go to ZRemesher options. We want to keep our groups, but we want to turn that down. And then we want to keep adapt on, but we're going to keep adapt down to 0 or at least a 1. And then we can say detect edges. We can also say keep creases, but pick one. In this case, we did creases, so we can say keep our creases. And now we can come through here and hit ZRemesher. And we just totally broke it. Why did we break it? We broke it because, we broke it because it's not truly centered for whatever reason. And that is fine. That's always fun to deal with. So what we can do is implement Stager. So if we go to Geometry, Stager, let's target this our home stage, and then let's send this back home. Zoom out and find, there we go. You can also just hit this little frame mesh icon, and let's keep this center, and then let's call this our target stage, so I can switch back and forth. Stager is also on the desktop, which is great. So let's do that. Let's try this one more time. Sorry, that keeps happening. That's my fault. That's one thing. I'm going to complain to Apple. Be like, hey, your screensaver keeps kicking me. All right, there we go. I have to remember to do this. Okay, so because of that, let's try this one more time. Let's go to ZRemesher, and then let's go ZRemesh. And that broke again. How did that break? Okay. That did break, and that's a little weird. So I'm going to troubleshoot time. So I don't like to I don't like to shy away from these moments. Nothing is perfect, and at this point, it's like it's giving me complications. It's yelling at me, telling me, "Hey, this is like the ZRemesher isn't working." Whether or not I'm truly center, or if there's another issue I'm not seeing, either way, now I want to troubleshoot this, and I do like to showcase this stuff. So there's another way to ZRemesh to get what we're looking for. So because it's not a stager problem, I'm going to switch this back and shut down the actual stage areas, and let's focus in on this. So what we can do is open up the Gizmo. There we go. And let's turn on Gizmo, and let's make sure that this is truly center. So let's turn off symmetry, and let's recenter this to the center of that subtool. There we go. And let's not complicate things. Let's turn off keep creases for now. We could also we can start by giving it more topology. So let's start with 10, hit ZRemesher, and see what results that we get. Okay, so that's a lot better. So 5 wasn't good enough to hold this shape like I originally thought, which is totally fine. So that's something to note right out the gate was, did I have enough topology? Probably not. And that's one of the reasons why that was breaking. Okay, so we diagnosed that problem. Second problem here is, well, I want to do detect edges. Now, 10,000 worked, so I'm going to say half, which should give me about 5,000. Or actually, let's go back in. Let's go into 10. Let's just hit ZRemesher, this time with detect edges. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. Okay, great. Now that that's there, let's go half, and let's hit retry. That's looking better. Retry again. That's looking better. There we go. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's just the original settings ZRemesher did not like, and that's totally fine. That is one way that we can do ZRemesher and kind of troubleshoot what is happening. Second thing we can do, let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to Control Tab. Second thing we can do is actually turn on the Gizmo, make sure it's center, open up the Gizmo, and do Remesh by ZRemesher. What this will do is this will cage, in a sense, it will cage the position of this. And now here we have target polygon actions. So actually, I can actually drag the slider up and say how many polygons do I want to try to have. And then I can remesh this as low or as high as I want. And it will isolate to this model specifically. So then this was the other way that I can go ahead and do this. And just by dragging this slider, I now can be like, oh, look, and actually that's a lot cleaner. That works out really well for me. And so just doing the, going to the menu here and going to Remesh by ZRemesher, really, now it's in place and it really worked off of that one object. So making sure your Gizmo was right there in the center, that helped. Then I can hit accept and boom, done. We're ZRemeshed. Easy enough. It's clean enough for what I'm going for, and I can reshape things as needed. So that is the other way, and that's the other way I recommend trying when you come against those issues. This is a very eventful sculpt session. Yeah, we're going ham on this one. Is that little vert edge face selector a custom pop-up? Yes, great question. So this little vert selector right here, when I pop this up, this is exclusive to ZModeler. This is the biggest change. As soon as I pick a different brush, it goes away because you no longer need that one section until I pick ZModeler again. If I go back to recents and then hit my ZModeler, or I come down here to the bottom where I have it stored, now it pops up again. Originally, it's off over here on the left-hand side, but if I long press and move that over, now it's just floating wherever I need. And if I don't need it, if I pick another brush, it just disappears. And if I do need it and re-grab that brush, then it reappears. Okay, great. So now with this button here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep my life simple, okay? And I'm just going to control drag. Actually, no, let's make it even easier. Let's go to our Subtool menu. We're going to rename this. We're going to call this button because we're original. And that's how we do things. And then I'm going to long press and duplicate this. There we go. And I'm just going to bring that out, scale that down, and fit this to the scene the rest of the way. There we go. Say something like that. Okay, looking beautiful. Now if I want this to look more like an actual button on the inside, right, then what I could do here, let's just do ourselves a solid. I'm going to scale this down just a little bit as if it's going to be providing me with a little bit of extra space. Solo this out. And then I'm going to go to my ZModeler, and we're going to do QMesh, right? And now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first select this top part and this bottom part like this. So then I have all this selected here. And I'm just going to go ahead and say just group by group and clear my mask. With the stuff that's hidden, it will actually keep those other polygroups the same polygroup, and it'll just affect these. And that was the fast way. So then I can just come in here and just QMesh this a couple times like this. And then I can QMesh this up. Right, so now that gives me a little bit more of like a space in there, especially when I render that. If I hit DPR, now it looks like there's some separation, and it's a really great way to make things look pretty good. There we go. And here, let's just do perfect. Divide that a few times. Here on this one, we're going to go through. We're pretty much done. That's pretty much the Saber tutorial here. The rest is just going to be you guys picking up whatever you need to. But this little guy right here, what I want to do is I just want to give it a little TLC. So everything we've learned up to this point, now we can start tweaking and fine-tuning things. So maybe at this point, I want to come in here, long press this guy, and I want to say, you know what, let's create like a little bit of some interest. So I'm going to long press, give me a different poly group. All right, and then make sure my QMesh is pushed in. There we go, tapping that just a little bit. And then coming through, group by normals, and then let's crease things. So let's go to geometry, let's go to crease, and then let's crease our poly groups. But guess what? Let's subdivide this up to level 2. So when I do that, now it starts looking a little bit more interesting. And just like that, we can create some new visual interest. Same thing here. We can come in, this is a little flat, this is a little boring. So instead of just subdividing it, we can come in and let's do some more visual interest here. So maybe we'll come in here and we'll long press this, do polygroup. There we go. Come on. It's yelling at me at the moment, but that's okay. Why aren't we doing that? All right. Yes. Does not want to do it. There we go. Okay. All right, well, whatever. Anyway, it's very, very bizarre. It's yelling at me here. Why are we doing that? Okay, so let's go back. Let's change. Let's go here. Boom, boom. We can also modify this thing too. So one of the things you can do to save yourself is you can come through here and you can edit your actions. So if you go to my presets and let's say you're multi-stream, you want to edit this, but you want it to, on the modifier side, you want to alternate your polygroups, right? So you just do multi-stream, edit, and then make sure you go to alternate your polygroups. Just click it, you hit save. There you go. Now you can just come through and alternate, which now works out because then you can come through and QMesh. That's an easy way to do it too. There you go. So yeah, and then you can start your subdivision. Boom. So ways you can make interesting changes really, really quickly and kind of exaggerate all the stuff that you need it to be. Now, one thing I'm going to note right here is that I did try to duplicate this, but it is subdivided. So instead of just the control duplicate, you can just long press and hit duplicate in the subtool menu and then drag that out. And there you go. That gives you some interest. And so just like that, we actually ended up from start to finish creating a whole new lightsaber that, you know, has some things and elements that we like, but ultimately you come through and it's pretty much finished. And we're just at about 1 million vertices in total, but that's because we subdivided and we started doing that portion. But you can have a lot of fun with this. If you go back to this object here with a Remesh, if you want to make this like finalize, you're happy with it, you're done with the adjustments, then you can actually just come down to the bottom and convert to make mesh. And then that becomes actual topology. Sorry, not that one. No, that was right. Wait, hold on. Why did I just confuse this? Here, hold on. Turn that off. Turn that on. Why is that not doing that? Oh, is it because I... No, wait. Hold on a second. And confuse themselves. Yeah, go to Make Mesh. Convert to Mesh Options, and then you should be able to make Mesh. And it's telling me there's multiple subdivision levels, so you can't do that. So delete your subdivision levels, then come up here to Array Mesh, and then come down and say Make Mesh. Now, it has an extrusion for it. This is a really cool little thing most people don't know about. It's actually extruding those polygroups when I said, you know, as by default, it's set to extrude. You just turn extrude off and say Make Mesh, and then it turns around and doesn't connect them all together. I had subdivision levels, and that's why it was telling me that it couldn't make to mesh, because it was trying to extrude things and it couldn't do it, and subdivisions just isn't supported. So that's how you would do that. So one more time, going back, you want to go to Convert Mesh down at the bottom. Make sure you don't have subdivisions. Convert Mesh. Make sure Extrude is turned off, and then say Make Mesh. And again, make sure you don't have subdivisions. And that is how you can make that into one mesh. There you go. And we'll hit frame. And this is ultimately how we can go through and make our lightsaber. You can also color it if you would like to make things have different materials. You can open up your different materials and say, like, well, here's a metal material, and you alt tab, and you can say what gets metal. You can also say what gets color. So if we come in here to the color tab, kind of get maybe like an orangish color, an orangey color, something like that. Then you can turn on your, let's grab just a paintbrush down here at the bottom. Make sure just make sure RGB or mRGB is turned on if you want to do both material and color. Click this guy and then say Fill Object. And then now if I change the color to something else, maybe you want to make this one have like a little bit more of a white color to it, then you can just go ahead and say, yeah, make it a little bit more white. And then you can just fill that. And you can go through and color stuff. So I actually like things to be, so let's color this real quick. So let's come in here, grab like a darker color. Again, we can turn on our wireframe so we know what we're affecting, because that's going to be super important. You can also open up your color and click your picker. Click that picker one time and then select the color. And then that will also allow you to fill that color. So you can come through and do this multiple times. Boom. Press Alt, move that over there, and hit fill color. So you could do something like that. Alt tab and fill color, whichever you would like to do. And then again, if you need a different color, you can select that color, or you can switch and find a new color. Something a little bit blue, maybe a little bit darker. There you go. So whichever works for you, then Alt tap and then fill that color all the way through. So you get something that you like. There we go. Fill that one. I want to pick that one. Alt tap that guy, come through, fill that color. So there you go. Something like that, and then you just hit save. A lightsaber is your blender, John. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, probably, absolutely. Can you work with 10 million poly on iPad? Absolutely, yes. You absolutely can. Hey, Nans, how you doing? Very cool, guys. Well, so this is, first off, again, if you guys made it all the way to the end and you hung out with me, congratulations. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and going through this. This tutorial will be living online for as long as humanly possible, aka hopefully forever. So it will be there, but we really wanted to make a getting started like project for ZBrush for iPad, especially since it's been highly requested. So appreciate you all hanging in there and going with me and, you know, enjoying the process as much as I did, hopefully. So with that being said, do we have any final questions before we wrap up the stream? You're doing fine, but sad to not see you last week. Yeah, I had something come up and I had to like really focus on that. I should be streaming next week. And then after that, I think I'm off for a little bit because I'll be in SIGGRAPH. So I have another stream or two. coming up. So, but if you guys like this style of more like getting started or streaming ZBrush tutorial stuff like this, let me know, and we can, you know, and also too, things you guys would like to see made. If you guys have any ideas, fill them in the comment section. I'll take note and we'll see what we can do. Back to ZBrush PC. So I do both. I do ZBrush PC and I do desktop. I stream both because they're both highly requested, but ZBrush for iPad is, you know, obviously a lot more newer, and so we want to get some good relevant information out. That being said, really quickly, if you want to render your guys's, like render BPR, pardon me, if you want to render BPR real quick, I'm going to choose a monster clay material, say something like this, because I think it looks pretty cool. There you go. And then you have render options. If we go to tool and we come back, so we go to the tool palette, back up, and then you have what's called lighting. So we can break this off and I can turn off lighting. Just like in the desktop version, I can come through here and I can actually come in and like set up some lighting. And the lighting changes, like the lights might vary, might seem a little, they may appear a little bit stronger or a little bit softer from PC to iPad, but just kind of pick something that thinks good. Again, if you move your little switch around, if you touch it one time, it'll send it forward, touch it one time, sends it back, so we can get like a rim light happening. And actually, let's do a little Star Wars-y, so let's get it kind of red. Yes, yes, perfect. And then from here, we can add a new palette. So we can open up and say, you know what, let's go to render. And now we can switch between light and render. Let's add this on. Let's come in here, say something like this. We can come to the side, maybe a little bit more to the side, and maybe pick like a blue, little complementary color. There you go, say something like that. And now what we can do is come into our render. We can go into properties. We can turn on ambient occlusion. And then we can come down to our BPR shadow. And we can adjust the F strength and the G strength. So I like to adjust the F strength at like 0.7 and then the G strength at 0.6. It's just my kind of preference. And then I do raise, especially hard surface stuff. I do more raise, which gives it more pass, which gives it better shadows. And then I do an angle of like 35 degrees, kind of more like replicating the sun. And then I go to BPR shadow or BPR AO and type in about 4,000, which is just a default number I came across. Then when I hit render, BPR render, it's going to give me a render and something that will look kind of nice to showcase as a whole. And you can adjust that as much as you would like, add more light, add less lights, etc. But here we can come through. And you can also, we could pick more of a, yeah, these are monster color, these are monster ones. We can also go to standard and go to basic material if we would like just our basic material, and then render that out. And then you can adjust things as necessary. That rim light in the back is just not that strong. There we go. So something a little bit more unique. Maybe it's not red enough. There we go. Let's turn that up and hit BPR. There you go. So you can adjust and get a little bit of a different render stuff. You can also go into your go to your canvas, and you could pick a much darker background if you would like to. You could pick a spectrum of that, or you can adjust on the slider, give yourself maybe a more bluer background, but still leaning on the dark side of things. That just makes it easier to see your model when you render in total. And then you can adjust that back however you would like to, which is normally by default on that color. Anyway, there you go. Now I'm just rambling. By the way, is the ZPR extension? Oh, so hard. Hold on. There's a few things. Let me go back up for a second. Please show how to cleanly do 3D scans. Ooh, 3D scans. Okay, yeah, we can do something like that. I like that. You are so welcome, Chris, for this tutorial. I guess it's good to play on iPad to prepare for Substance Blender, etc. to work from coffee. And you said that 10 million would be okay. Yeah, you can get, depending on your iPad, this iPad in total, I can get like 90 million vertices per subtool. That's a lot, but you can do that. You know, I've gone as high as 80 million on a single project, and it handles it just fine. let's see. By the way, is it ZPR extension? So you can get ZTL or ZPR extension. So if you come up here to the top and you go to your file size or your file/IO, come down here to save options, you have Z project or Z tools. If you have a Z project, then it's going to be bigger file, but you can change it. By default, I believe it's set to Z project. I sometimes will switch to Z tool, but it's up to you, whichever works. And then you can also adjust, enable your how you save your undo history, or if you want to skip that, if you want to optimize, if you want to delete any quick save files, that's all accessible here. I also turn off quick save personally because I save enough on myself, but it's just habit. I'm not a big quick save user, but that's how it can be accessed there. On site, yep, not a problem. When will I get a Wacom Style pencil for the iPad? Get the true ZBrush experience. That's funny. I like that. I may have to see what kind of sleeves are available. There you go. Is there plans to make remotes for the iPad to program hotkeys, etc.? So we encourage anybody who makes third-party hotkeys devices to actually support ZBrush. So I want to say there's a couple out there that people have used. I forget what their name is, so I apologize, but there are a few out there that people have used, and I've been interested in testing as well. So if I come across anything of note, I will point you in that direction. All right, well, that is going to wrap it up for today's stream. Thank you, everybody who came and hung out. And also, if you followed along, please do us a favor and just tag us on our social medias. You could tag me directly, IR Scopes. You could find me on everything at that point, or you could tag Maxon, ZBrush, or Maxon. And please, I would love to see what you guys create. It's super awesome. If you guys have not already, do yourselves a favor, and if you go to the bottom of the screen, there is a downloadable file. You guys can download the first lightsaber that I built to kind of see what the project looks like. You can play with it, you can animate it, and if you do, tag me. That would be super cool. And don't forget, too, guys, that we do on our website, maxon.net, we do have learning via Cineversity, which is where you can go ahead and you can find the ZBrush for iPad tutorials on your computer. You can also find it on the iPad directly under the tutorials. But you have anything you need, not just ZBrush stuff, but also Cinema 4D stuff. Also, if you scroll over a couple times, you'll see there's a Getting Started with ZBrush Desktop. So that's super important, and that was really amazing. So definitely doing that. And then, too, if you're a student, a teacher, or such, you actually have access to our educational program, which allows you to get it for super, super cheap, which gives you all the tools that you need. So let's say you're a student, you come into this link, and then you click here, and then you could see per US. This is US pricing. We actually go through a validated process, and then that gets you here. I'm going to share all the links for this right now. So let me just load this up here. I'll copy this for you guys, and then let me post this for you all. But all the links, including the download files, are there. And then, of course, too, we're on YouTube, so please make sure to go ahead and follow and hit the bell notification, because not only do we do live streams, there's a lot of artists that do live streams, but also we have a bunch of YouTube shorts coming out for iPad to kind of help teach what's going on, since iPad is the newest one. There's also an entire series of Ask ZBrush for the desktop version, which we are planning on rekindling soon to open that up for more questions. And then that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you all for being here and hanging out. I really appreciate you all, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye. Oh, did my mic fall? Maybe it died. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Bye, 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 bye.